right, I'll go ahead and call the Smithville RTU Board of Education meeting to order. With that, please stand, and Dazzlers, will you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we just got.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Earlier this evening, we welcomed our two new board members, Ms. Stacia Cudd and Mr. Patrick Nichols. We welcomed them to the board and thanked our previous two board members, Mr. Scott Haggerty and Mr. Denny Fales, for their many years of service to the district. Our first item on this evening's agenda is something we very much enjoy doing, and that's recognizing elite performances in the district, including our Dazzler dance team, who has a presentation for us, or
no, we're just coming to recognize
this
them.
is a presentation. So
It's
what do you
not a
got?
presentation unless you have something you want.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, we prepared something to.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Then.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Take up much of your time.
If
you so
you
much.
would, when you introduce your squad, I don't know if you're planning on it. Okay. Your team. I don't know the. Thanks.
I'm Sophie Tyler, coach of the
Thank you very
Dazzlers. I'll let each of the girls who were able to be here tonight introduce themselves as well.
Cool. I'm the assistant coach, Coach Lee, that you guys. My name is Megan Pippin, and I'm a current junior on the team. My name's Lainey, and I'm a current freshman.
My name's Emily and I'm a freshman.
My name's Kaylee, I'm a junior.
My name is Lainey Deal and I'm a senior.
I'm Kaylee Solder, and I'm also a senior.
We couldn't get all of our girls here today. They trained so many hours at their studios too, and they couldn't get out of it today. So we're not going to read all this to you, but we just put together a little thing about kind of a snapshot of what we do for Dazzlers. So general information, you kind of read through there. We did have 152 practices last year out of 11 months of the year. So these girls worked really hard. We had to fundraise to get money to go to nationals, and so the parents worked really hard as well. We went to NDA camp in Lincoln, Nebraska, and you can kind of see how they finished there. They were, out of all the teams that went to that camp, they were honored to get first place in each division, so that was great. Then we went to the Missouri Dance Team Association state competition, and at that competition, we compete against all 3A schools. And I didn't count, I believe there were 22 schools in our category. And man, we wanted first. Oh, we were so close, but we ended up getting second place. They did win the jazz category, but I want you to know what incredible athletes and representatives you have here. Every member of our team earned an academic award for having a GPA higher than 3.5, and 8 out of the 12 dancers had a GPA of 4.0 or higher. So there you go.
Very important.
Kids work hard in all aspects, in the classroom and also at dance. Finally, the big thing is we did go to the NDA National Competition in Orlando, Florida. You can see that this event was attended by 2,800 dancers from 34 states. There were 470 dance routines that competed. We were in the medium varsity category, and something that's unique about nationals is they don't take into account your school size. It's how many kids are on the floor. So anything between 11 and 14 would be in the medium varsity category. So we were by far the smallest school that made it into finals. We were competing against some area schools, including Park Hill South and Blue Springs, and Staley were there as well. So anyway, we were thrilled to make it into finals. It's a big deal to make it into finals, and we finished 15th in the nation in the jazz category after a ton of hard work. So that's our year.
There you go. Something you may not know that was shared with me by one of the parents on the team was just, things you may not think about besides costume changes and everything would be your choreographing. So tell me about that a little bit. Tell the group.
So this.
Sorry.
I've done a lot of the choreographing over the years, and I feel like they've done really well with it. We've learned that a lot of the teams that are winning and doing well are hiring professional choreographers from out of state. So we made the jump this year. We spent quite a bit of money to get jazz choreography from It's called Tribe 99. She's a choreographer that we connected with, and we flew her in from Texas, and she taught us this amazing routine. And then we connected with her throughout the year over Zoom, and she came to some of our competitions, and at nationals, she was there. Between prelims and finals, the judges will give suggestions, and they expect you to make those changes within 24 hours. And so she was there to help us with that too. And she's just been really instrumental also in helping my seniors try out for college teams, because she's kind of in the know and she knows people at all area colleges. And it was a lot of money, but I feel like it was super beneficial.
Yeah, those are just those little details no one knows. So congratulations. We're very proud of you and know how many hours and endless, I don't know even what to say, practices and routines and outside rehearsals, to your point. So thank you for always being a great advocate for your team, and great job to each of you. Yeah.
Good job, ladies.
Banner ceremony sometime in the gym. I'll just put a plug out there.
We're running out of banner space in the gym, right?
15th and nationals.
There's plenty.
That deserves a banner.
No, I mean, we're gonna have to move it to electronic, right? We're gonna have to
That would be
really do it upright, right?
I
Because then we
think we
can
need
include
one.
team pictures and things with it, right?
Thank you. That'd be great.
Would you mind coming up so we can shake your hands and congratulate you?
Good job, ladies.
Good. Congrats, congrats. Well, good to hear. Well done. You're right, one of you, but we can- Good job.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Nice job. Nice
job.
Congratulations. Congratulations. I know. Nice job.
Thank you.
Oh, more.
Nice job.
I can wait.
Yes.
No, I'm,
You're hot. People with jackets.
I think,
Just curious. Just curious.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Unless you want to stay. You're welcome. Welcome.
I don't think
Hi, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
Good
ladies.
night. You're welcome to stay if you want.
Grab some cake. Grab some cake.
It's pretty.
All right, next item on the agenda is 7.1, adoption modification of the agenda. Is there any modification in the agenda? I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, a reluctant second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. The joys of technology.
It's running a little slow.
7-0, the agenda is adopted. Next item on the agenda, 8.1, approval of regular session minutes for March 15th, 2023. And 8.2, bills for payment under consent agenda. Those two items under consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. For our two new members, if you attended or watched that meeting, you are able to vote on it if you feel it adequately reflects, or you can abstain. All right, motion carries 601 with Mr. Nichols abstaining. Next item on the agenda, 9.1, comments from the audience. I've got one comment card. Mrs. Brooke Perkins, the floor is yours.
I just want to say thanks to everybody. What a great race we ran, and I seriously had so much fun with you guys, getting to know you since I didn't know you before, Patrick, very well. And I just want you to know that just look me out here. If you find anything I can help you guys out, please feel free to reach out. Good job.
Fantastic.
Thank
Stay
you.
tuned. We got an item on the agenda that we're gonna need some help with, so
Thank you.
thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, 9.2, board priorities.
Okay, actually, before I get into the board priorities, last month was Board Appreciation Month, and the governor has sent a proclamation a little after the fact. So I wanted the opportunity to share with you the proclamation. It says, the Office of the Governor, State of Missouri Governor's Proclamation, whereas a system of quality public education is essential to the future of our state and nation, and whereas the people of Missouri have a long tradition of support for public education in their local school districts, and whereas local school boards are the ultimate expression of the unique American institution of representative governance of public school districts, and whereas local school boards acting on behalf of and in close connection with the people of their communities chart the direction of education in their communities, and whereas local school boards serve as the key community advocate for children, youth, and the public schools. Now, therefore, I, Michael L. Parson, Governor of the State of Missouri, do hereby proclaim March 2023 to be School Board Recognition Month. And Missouri, and urge all Missourians to recognize school boards as they strive with their communities to improve our public schools through quality leadership. In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the great seal of the state of Missouri in the city of Jefferson, this 30th day of November, 2022. So I'm not sure why you're getting this in April, but wanted to share that with you anyway. So we can maybe put it in a frame if you want to, otherwise it's folded in half, but. Okay, so let's now get to board priorities. The first one is to monitor all aspects of the performance of continuous improvement standards related to MSIP 6. And then we've been looking at L1, the local school board and superintendent or chief executive officer engage in ongoing professional learning, self-evaluation in order to strengthen governance practices. So we've been doing the book study of the governance core. And so I sent you a little Cliff Notes version of chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 was about the superintendent governance mindset. You know, last month it was about the board's governance mindset. This time it was about the superintendents. And the 4th chapter was so timely. It was about welcoming new trustees. So I did not provide you questions this time because I knew our agenda was so long for our meeting. But I did want to know if there was anything that stuck out to you. You know, I highlighted a few quotes in here and took some notes. Is there anything that stuck out to you as a board?
We don't want one or two as a superintendent.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's what I took. So.
What you're saying. Okay. One is hands-off approach and to ignore the board. They don't want that. Or 2, somebody that is always trying to do damage control and be so controlling to keep the board in the dark.
Well, and then the case study out of California, I thought was really beneficial to, you know, go through their challenges. I didn't bring my book, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But, you know, the progression of what they had to go through collectively, I think was a good example of how boards grow and evolve. And I think the pursuit of that is always a good thing. So,
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was good about superintendents, they view difficult questions not as micromanagement, but as opportunities to facilitate understanding. And I think you've been in a meeting, you know, that stands out. That just how it's, yeah.
Stacia, Patrick, you guys have to catch it.
Well, you know, it does definitely cause you to reflect. It was funny because I was reflecting as I was going through here. Am I doing this? Am I doing this? You know, what are strengths or areas of growth? And same thing with welcoming new trustees. I'm like, hey, have we done this? Have we done this? So it's been really great for reflection.
And I really enjoyed the welcoming new trustees piece. You know, I tried to focus a lot on that last year and again this year. And in I think it's page 81, it talks about the 3 realities of governance and that you're elected as an individual. You are here to bring your unique skill sets, the things that you bring, your thoughts, your ideas, your strengths. But really what makes us strong is the group of us working together and recognizing that, you know, this group here is a true reflection of our community. which means there will be healthy dialogue at times. That is not always the easiest, but it's healthy and positive on behalf of the district and putting the kids first. That dialogue is nothing but a good thing for all of us.
Yeah, and the part that says, you know, preconceived notions and assumptions can't be allowed. You know, Scott and I that was a pretty heated time for school boards across the country, and we worked really well together in a board. So that's not just something that we're saying.
Yeah.
It really is true.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things about being on a board is the constant turnover. But I think it's one of the best things too, because it brings in new thoughts, new concepts. I listen to somebody else and I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And I think that's so, you know, and I think it says here, the governance mindset takes time at the front end, but represents a lasting bargain once established. So, I mean, I think that that's something that we all want to strive for. So I'm excited about this new board.
And I said that we'll continue this conversation a little bit more in a couple more minutes too. And we stole some of Dr. White's presentation. So sorry about that, but I'm sure you got more you can add.
Well, I think what's amazing, you know, this board has never had a retreat. And so, you know, at the beginning of this school year, that was a step in the right direction, having a retreat, bringing in, you know, setting some norms, getting to know, you know, we had some vulnerable moments trying to think about what makes us tick and work the way that we work. And it's very exciting to hear, you know, that that's going to continue that work with Dr. Moss, you know, another retreats planned coming up and, you know, setting those common goals and looking at our strategic plan as we're developing and finalizing our strategic plan, being able to set priorities and goals and having that strategic mission moving forward. It's very exciting. It's kind of like a good, you know, we're kind of at a starting point, but, you know, just really getting deeper and stronger, you know, in the years ahead. So that's a really exciting thing. Any other comments before I move on? Okay, strategic plan will be discussed by Dr. Cradfield in her discussion. That's our second priority. The third is hiring, you know, making sure we have best practice in all of our recruiting, hiring, and evaluation and development and retention of staff. Communication between stakeholders. This is not in there, but you have a communication in front of you. So I've been working with Mindy Hedgeforth as our communication specialist. She came to me with this idea of how can we tell our story? We keep hearing that over and over again about telling our story. And so she has taken off with that and has been through several drafts. And this is what she has put together. She got to share it today. And Dr. Cradfield is going to take it to a recruitment day. So please take a look. These will be printed maybe on something a little sturdier in the future, but for in the short term, since it's hot off the press, we wanted to show you what she put together. So really excited for that community partnership and telling our story and getting ourselves out there in the public. 4 is community partnerships again, and opportunities to plan, campaign, and successfully pass the no tax rate increase bond issue. We had a very successful bond on April 4th. We're super excited about that with a 68.5% yes vote. Thank you to each of you for putting your heart and soul into, you know, discerning what we need to do and making those decisions moving forward, and to everyone and the audience for your work and word of mouth to support our district. So I'm really excited in the days ahead for our district. I know Mr. Hitchcock will speak to that a little bit later as well. And finally, the last one is to execute effective search and hiring process for the next superintendent of schools. And although we've hired Dr. Moss back a few months ago, he's been attending. Tonight, we have Dr. Todd White with us, and he's going to do a presentation to the board as well. So welcome.
I believe that you have a presentation in board box. I'm interviewing from up on the screen. Is it in the?
I will send it to you right now.
Very good. I also have it on USB.
Probably be faster.
Good evening and congratulations to your 2 board members. Thank you very much for serving your community. And I really appreciated the opportunity to be here and listen to your previous conversation just now about your book study and those sorts of things, because really that's the heart of what I'm talking about here this evening. And I have 2 goals for you this evening, and you'll tell me whether or not I've achieved those once we've concluded. The first is to talk about, from an EGL perspective, to the Smithville Board of Education, the transition of superintendents from interim to Dr. Moss. And so I have a couple of slides in there. I want to go through that, ask any questions that you might have, and understand it fully, because really, because of the early start that you had in the process of selection, as well as hiring Dr. Moss, as Denise has said, it's about an 18-month opportunity that we have to work together. So I think that hopefully, from your perspective, that will be well suited. I feel as though that it's a great opportunity for us to make a very smooth transition between superintendents, but also have a really good year with the new board and your new superintendent. Okay. The second is to really kind of look at your board policies and talk about role definition of school board members. It's very clear with regards to the policies that you have about what both the expectation as well as the responsibilities are of a board member. You draw your board policies from MSBA, Missouri School Boards Association. And so I cite those in the PowerPoint to pull out that section B is really about all of your role and responsibility, where you live, how you operate, the things that you hold your chief executive accountable for, as well as responsibilities from judicial, fiduciary, and the like. And so we'll just briefly go through those. Yes, yes, sir. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So as this comes up, presentation, go to the second slide. It'd be awesome. Boom. All right, here we go. So as a part of our work, and when I say our, I'm talking about EGL work with you, we have some very defined outcomes in terms of what we are responsible for. Go to this slide. So work with Denise and March, develop a smooth transition and a transitional plan. You know that early as January, if not in December, Mark was providing you transition planning and those sorts of things to go along with that, and certainly so was Denise. So doing that. Additionally, you will see an entry plan. Now, you've already seen a transition plan from Dr. Moss and if you will, Denise. This entry plan will really be the first 90 days from July 1st. So it's Dr. Moss's entry into this new role with you as a board and those sorts of things. And so you'll see a little bit more detail around that. I'm sure that will be part of the discussion at your upcoming retreat. And so that'll be flushed out, I think, in good order. We also will meet monthly with Dr. Moss to just identify areas of both opportunity, sounding board, best practice as we can. Thanks. Hold that, or are we good? You should be good. Okay. And so we really commenced that back in December with phone calls and a couple of in-person meetings. And so it's going very, very well. We'll also attend a board meeting, and that's really just to get a feel for how you do things. And it's not to offer any suggestions other than ask. We do get to see a lot of board meetings, and over my 19-year career in about 4 different districts, I've seen a lot of boards and agendas and those sorts of things. And so there's really no right or wrong way to do it. It's just what best serves you. And so we can be of counsel with regards to that as well. We're available really kind of 24/7 for any sort of question or opportunity that we can in order to assist with that. So you go to the next slide, please. All right. Additionally, what we'll do is that we have a team of 8 retired superintendents from around the state, and that is encompassing that 200 years of superintendent experience. So it's not just me, if you will. It's a whole group of people, and we communicate quite often about situations and suggestions and those sorts of things. So really, hopefully, we'll bring both you and Mark that sort of consultation and experience as we do it. We'll also assist from a consultant standpoint in your budget that I know Denise is working on, your agenda. You have items relative to the upcoming fiscal year here this evening, and that tax rate preparation. That's critical in order to make sure that you have the revenue that can meet your obligations as you work through those. It's a little daunting, either for a board member or a first-time superintendent going through that process. So anyway, we can help with that, and we think that you'll be in great shape. Attend 3 of your leadership team meetings, and again, that's just offer Dr. Moss and your administrative team an opportunity just to listen and learn and offer some suggestions when we can. I've already began this process, but we met with Jeff and Mark to talk a little bit about the evaluation process for your new superintendent. I will tell you that is a challenge that's universal among school boards. You can go to MSBA and the room is packed when somebody's talking about evaluations because it's just so darn hard in order to be able to do this. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to push an easy button with you. However, we will be able to listen to some of the goals, the aspirations that you have as a district, as a board, and then really kind of work those into a process that where you can hold both your superintendent accountable, but also yourselves in terms of meeting those obligations. Okay. And then provide a workshop of best practices in governance, and leadership. And that's what we're doing here this evening. Okay. All right. So let me go to this slide, and then I'm going to break and ask if you have any questions relative to transition. Okay. And I thought the easiest way to break this down was just to be very distinct about responsibilities. Okay. Now this doesn't encompass everything, right? That first 2 bullets on Denise's side is a lot, right? It's everything that is on your agenda, everything that you've been working on. So I don't mean to minimize the work that's being done, but I am seeking to be very succinct about how we work through these last few months in terms of decision-making and handoff, okay? So obviously Denise is your interim through June 30, both by contract as well as the agreement that you've made going forward. Responsibilities for finishing this school year, okay, from now until June 30 are her responsibilities by contract and what you have obligated her to do. She's also responsible for the creation of the fiscal year budget for 2024, okay, which is one of the major responsibilities that I know she's been working on and is forthcoming as you continue to work your way towards, I'm assuming, a June approval.
Preliminary budget for June.
Yes. Okay. And then when you say preliminary, so do you come back after tax rate and have a final?
We have a first revision.
Gotcha.
After tax rate.
Excellent. Okay. So those are the responsibilities there. Mark is incoming July 1st, obviously, contract as well as launching through those next 3 years. Responsible for the entry plan that I described earlier, those first 90 days, and responsible for currently decisions that will be deployed in that next school year. Okay. So there's a little bit of if this was a Venn diagram, they cross, right? There's this huge piece in here where a good deal of collaboration is required in order to do that. Go to the next slide, please. So really it's in 2 main areas. The first is personnel, okay? So all decisions that will impact next year's budget really should be a collaboration between your 2 leaders to ensure that that's done. You have a several items here in just a few minutes that are related to that. We're hoping that those discussions occurred and we understand both implication as well as opportunity in terms of making that recommendation to you. Secondly, there are legal implications, things that are currently in your bailiwick with your attorney in terms of things that are churning, okay? Whether they're lawsuits or other work documents and agreements, MOUs, all of those sorts of things are in there. That's also a very important collaboration between Mark and Denise, you as a board, and your attorney to make sure that there's not a hitch in that as you make that step between one fiscal year to the next, between one leader to the next. And obviously it's going to be, I think, really good that all the parties are continuing to be here so that that dialogue, sometimes if somebody is actually retiring or leaving the district, that absence sometimes creates opportunities for things to fall through the crack here. So I'm feeling very good about that in regards to where you are. So personnel is collaboration key in that arena. The second is your budget for next year. So by virtue of contract responsibility that you have deployed to Denise for this year, she is responsible to prepare for you a preliminary budget that will come before you in June for your consideration. Okay. Mark is responsible to take that budget then and implement it. Okay. So that collaboration is key. Again, all the parties are in the room, continuing to be in the district. So I don't see it as a problem. We just want to highlight the fact that those conversations, those meetings, purposeful, making sure that they're calendared well and that everybody knows that when a recommendation is made to you, that these two leaders and Robert are all together on that. So no surprises and everybody is well informed. Okay. So again, I don't see nor hear nor observe any issues with that. I just want to make sure that we highlight those, particularly with regards to budget and personnel and those duties for decision-making from here through June 30 and beyond. Okay. So let's stop and see if you have any questions about what our responsibilities are, EGL, the responsibilities that each of your leaders have, and the collaboration there too, with regards to specifically budget and personnel.
So real fast, board and Karen, this presentation is now in your inbox, your email inbox.
Thank you.
And also, I don't remember if you covered at the beginning, this is part of so EGL was the firm that we hired for the search firm. And part of what we really liked about their process was including this section and this support beyond hire, and the wealth of knowledge that the team had specifically in the Kansas City, including the Northland area.
First two bullets on those two slides really kind of indicate what we contractually agreed to.
I guess my only question, and this is just as much for you to weigh in on, but you painted a nice theme, 100,000 foot overview of kind of how it comes and goes and how it works together. I'm assuming you have awareness, and from your experience, there's awareness around the specific tasks that are required to, I think about like one-on-ones and stuff like that. Those get mapped out in this process to ensure, he's aware, she's aware that that communication handoff's happening. When does he take effect? Is it getting that granular or no?
From my perspective, no, but from their perspective, I believe so.
I mean, we communicate. We don't have a calendar in front of us of you have to talk this many times. We just talk all the time.
Okay.
I mean, we're texting specifically or give a call or he'll stop by. And so any decision, like anything that's been brought forward tonight, for example, all that's been vetted and discussed.
Okay.
So we just stay in contact just because we want a smooth transition as well.
Thank you.
And I could speak very well to being a first year superintendent and what that's like, and definitely want him to be successful in that role. And so.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. So we're good on transition. We're good on where we're headed with regards to the remaining few weeks and months here, and then the launch into next year. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about role responsibility of a board relative, and I'm going to come at this from two main aspects. First is, as I mentioned, your board policy. Your board policy dictates everything within a school district. I am fond of saying, and the people that I work with may not be as fond of hearing it years ago, but board policies are really not a suggestion. They are how you govern and how these folks operate your school district. If there's any change, any modification, it has to be done by you. Okay? And so they are clear and clearly written and updated very frequently. I saw that tonight you have two revisions that you're taking a look at, and you'll have more as the legislative session concludes and those sorts of things. Court cases are adjudicated. So all of those sorts of things are important to be able to do that. So board policies is really an important part of defining what you do, how you do it, and your role and responsibility. The second is there's a pretty good body of knowledge out there from the Missouri School Boards Association, from the National School Boards Association, and just empirical data that has been studied and reviewed that say this is how highly effective boards operate. And so we've taken that information as well and combined that with this conversation. So you're going to hear me talk about your board policies. You're also going to hear me say highly effective boards do this. Okay, so just offering you an opportunity to be thoughtful and reflective about those highly effective practices. Okay, first of all, it's all about relationships, right? I mean, what happens in a classroom is about relationship building and trust that occurs between a teacher and a student, between teachers and principals, between parents and the school and the district. Board members are certainly a part of that relationship building and trust building that occurs within a district. You, by virtue of having two new board members, are essentially a new board, even though you've had new members that have seasoned service here. As a whole, you are new as of this evening. And so what a great time for us to think about what are our operating principles, adherence to our board policies as they're clearly stated, and being a little reflective on what highly effective boards do. Okay, so spelled out the relationship for individual board members to understand their role wholly as a board, and the role of your superintendent. Okay, so clearly stated in BBA, your board policy is that you exercise general supervision of the district. Okay, and that general supervision is highlighted because it does not say that you are in the executive role. You are in the governance role of the superintendent, or excuse me, of the school district. The executive role obviously is filled by your superintendent. Okay, so what does general supervision mean then, right? How deep do I go into discussions? And we heard about asking questions and those sorts of things. So you don't want to look over someone's shoulder. You don't want to get in the weeds. You don't want to be seen as micromanaging. So what is that space? Okay, and so what we're hoping to do here this evening is to provide some clarity to that. Not to suggest that there was not clarity before, but again, just to reinforce that with you. Okay, so general supervision is basically identified in these three areas. Missouri state statutes. Okay, all of your board policies, or I should say a majority of them, have links directly to Missouri statutes. Part of the revisions that we have constantly are because of the legislative session, what happens, and then of course they're rolled out. Okay, rules and procedures via your Missouri School Boards Association and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Okay, so obviously the Missouri State Board of Education has the same role you have for all 900,000 students in the state of Missouri as you do for your students here in Smithville. And then their executive arm, as you have a superintendent, they have a department within the state government that is the executive role. Policies, rulemaking, and then it flows out through the Missouri Department of Education to all of its member schools. And then finally, your policies, rules, and procedures that are identified in your local handbooks, in your local Board of Education policies. So those are the three areas that if we were to say, where does general supervision come from in terms of a definition? How do we best understand it? We're going to look at those three areas because they'll clearly define what your role and responsibility are. Okay, next. So in addition, a board is accountable to obviously the electorate. Okay, we just had an election. We have 2 new members, and so you're responsible to them as a community and as a whole. You shall be, it's important that your policy says you shall be responsive to the educational needs and the imposed financial constraints of the district. Okay, doesn't say you should be. So those shalls are important parts of your board policy and an important part of what state statute requires of you. Okay, so being responsible to your community, being responsible to the educational needs of your students and the financial constraints, basically identify the 3 pillars of your main responsibilities and emphasis as a board. Board of Education shall govern the operations of the district within the limits of the law. Shall make its members and professional staff, district patrons aware the board has authority to take official action only when acting as a whole of the board. That's one of the most important tenets of this, particularly in small communities. I grew up in Marceline. Don't know if you know where that's at. My dad was on the board for over 20 years. Okay, I learned a lot from just listening and watching all of that occur. It's difficult to be a board member at times because there are things that people want from you. They want either information or they want action, okay, of you individually. And the truth is that as a single person, you have no more authority than anyone else. It's only when you sit at this dais, only when you convene as a board, and only when you have an approved agenda can you really have any action taken. Okay. And so oftentimes that's an important educational component that we have for our community, is to understand that, yes, I'm a member of a board, but the only time that we act is when we're all sitting there, right? Board approved dates within the limits of the law and an approved agenda, okay? And through board policy, you shall have the final authority, and we'll kind of vet that out here in a little bit. Next slide. So here are the areas of responsibility that you have, and we'll talk about each one of these as we go through those. But legislative, appraisal, staffing, educational planning and evaluation, executive function, financial resources, public relations, and judicial. So let's go to the first one. Next slide. So legislative board making responsibilities. This is one of the most important things you do, is establish policies, rules, and procedures that serve as guidelines for your district. I mentioned that earlier. They're not suggestions. They are the way that you, as a board, say, I'm meeting my obligation in the Missouri state statutes to the State Board of Education and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and fulfilling those other 3 things we talked about: our community, our educational needs, and our financial methods of support. Okay. Establishment of goals and objectives of the school district is critically important. And it appears to me that based upon your early conversation, you've done a portion of that in terms of identifying areas of your responsibility and what you've given to your executive and how you're holding that accountable to come back to you. So bravo for that. And we'll only be able to continue just to embellish that and make it better as we make this transition. Okay, next. Okay, highly effective boards. They review written policies on a continual basis, ensuring consistency and the legality of board action and administrative decisions. I don't know the process by which that happens for you. Okay, some boards do it via committee that takes a look of a committee of the board and possibly of the administration to take a look at all of those revisions that come and then make recommendations to you, including legal as a part of that conversation. Some do it as a full board as well. Okay. Again, no right or wrong. It's whatever feels right for you and gives you the opportunity to make sure that you do two things. You do it on a continual basis, and that it's consistent and legal as you move forward. Okay. These review and revisions related to legislation, both state and federal, court decisions, research, as well as other reasons as determined by you locally to be able to provide. Okay, so legislative function. Appraisal is also an important part of what you do. So the board is responsible for evaluating the effectiveness of its policies and their implementation. Okay, so this is not necessarily evaluation of your superintendent. This is really appraisal and evaluation of the programming that occurs within your district. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. The board shall hold the superintendent responsible for furnishing complete information and necessary for the board's evaluation of the district's programs. So within that policy, VBA, it specifically says that you hold your superintendent responsible for providing you information so that you can make this appraisal. Okay. I didn't see it on your agenda this evening, but I'm assuming in passaging you have program evaluations, right? So you have people come, they talk about their program, and they are evaluating it based upon criteria that you, via the superintendent or administrative team, have set forth, right? So that's how that appraisal process occurs. Interesting, when we were talking about asking questions, that is your main responsibility to ask questions when those appraisals come. Otherwise, you don't know how to move forward in terms of testing and looking at any sort of manner of either holding it responsible or improving over time. Okay, so, and again, kind of a norm that it's, you are here to ask questions. You are here to receive information. There are basically three things that you do when you meet here. Okay, you receive information, you have a discussion, or you take action. Those are the three things that you basically do as a board. Okay, and without asking questions and having information and reading it ahead of time and those sorts of things, pretty tough to be able to do that on a consistent basis and make it look like it's not sausage all of the time, right? So it has a presentation to it and works well for you. Okay, next one. Okay, so you will establish priorities, objectives, and goals in order to make that appraisal. It sounds like you have done that. And I just encourage you that over time that you take a look at those, and are they meeting your needs? Are they appropriate? Time always has a way of looking at things in a new way. And so those priorities should change because you're always kind of in this environment of receiving input as well as opportunity and aspirations that you have for your kids. And so those priorities are going to change over time. And so there should be the objectives and goal attainment will change as well. So constant conversation in that. Retreats are a great way to do that. Making observations during those program evaluations that come to you. Good ways to be able to do that. Okay, next. We would suggest that you kind of take a look at a SMART goal format to be able to do this. And I'm going to just cover this very briefly because there's another workshop that we could do on this one. But it's basically specific, measurable, attainable, relevant time, right? So if you go to the next slide, here's, and I'll just leave this with you. It's part of the presentation. But here we're looking at capital expenditures in technology, right? So what's the goal? Okay, it is basically to evaluate what we currently have, assess the equipment needed, and submit a budget. That's the goal, right? Specifically, it's capital expenditures. So we zeroed right in on where that resource is going to come from. And we have to be able to do this so that we don't significantly drain those capital resources, because you can do it pretty quickly in technology, right? So planning is a part of that. And really this goal says we need a specific plan to address ongoing technology needs as required. So we've got a goal. Now we're getting pretty specific about a plan, right? Measurable, it's going to be written to the outlines to identify what the equipment is, the life expectancy of it, cost estimates, et cetera, et cetera. Attainable, technology director is responsible. Can also use outside consultants, which is an important part of this because you're allowing, if you will, in this regard, some leeway to receive expert or other resources, other people that can come into the space and look at it more objectively, possibly, which is a good point. Relevant, why is this important? Well, it's important because we function well in terms of educating our kids with technology. We can't bring our resources, and we know that it needs to be a part of the annual budgeting process. Time bound, you got dates, you got board meetings, those sort of things. Okay, so we would suggest some format like that because that clearly presents itself to what the goal is, who's responsible, the timeline, all of those sorts of things. Okay. All right. Next. Okay. So in two places, you are responsible in your board policies for financial resources. Okay. BVA, as well as in DVA, which is district responsibilities for functioning this. So here's what it says in DV. Preliminary responsibilities, the board secure adequate funds in all levels. So you'll have your operations, you'll have your teaching, you'll have your capital, and you have your debt service, right? The board may revise the proposed budget. We've heard that there's preliminary, and then there is a revision that is done as necessary throughout the year. The board will conduct at least one public hearing, most likely that's in June. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, the board will approve a system of internal accounting to ensure proper accounting of revenue and expenditure. This is important, and obviously you have help in doing that. Robert does as well. You also have an auditor that comes in and makes a presentation to you each year that says, according to government, GASB, I can't remember what all the government approved accounting principles, something in that regard. But this is what the industry expects. This is where you measure up to that, and then they're going to cite any areas of opportunity that you have to grow. Okay, so if somebody wanted to take a look at what are the priorities of the Smithville School District, there's really only one document that they would have to take a look at. It's not your INSEP document. No disrespect to that. It's not a communications piece. No disrespect to that. It's really to go take a look at your budget. A budget identifies what is most important to you. Okay, and thinking of it in that regard gives you a sense of, man, this is a really important responsibility that we have in order to make sure that we can do it. The other is this, is that the decisions that you will make as a new board will affect future boards. The budget that you have has been a product of past boards, and now you are, if you will, either left to receive it or you're anxious to get it, one or the other, right? So we just want to make sure that these sorts of things have a life expectancy, and they also have a tremendous way of ensuring the stability or the instability of an organization over time. Okay, next. Okay, public relations. So important part of what you are responsible for is to keep your public informed. And really, this has kind of been one of those things that's been highlighted over the last several years, whether it was COVID or not, whether we're wearing masks or not, the health department rules or not. This is really now kind of one of the most important responsibilities of a Board of Education is to keep your community informed. And a strategic plan, a CSIP, is a really good way in order to be able to do that, because it, again, basically identifies what are the important programming needs, educational needs of your district, and how you are fulfilling those responsibilities. And so I know that you have great people in place, and they have a lot of resources to draw from around the Kansas City region as well as in Missouri. We just highlight this one because previous to the last 2 or 3 years, this was one that was maybe lent itself more to a nicety. But it's important for us to be able to do that, particularly if we're going to go ask for a bond or a levy. We ramp it up. This is something now that really is an expectation that really needs to be held to a high regard. Not telling you what you don't already know, right? Okay. All right, next one. Okay, educational planning and evaluation, again, in 2 areas here. One in board, the other is in instruction, okay, which is an important component here. So you're responsible for educational goals. Okay, those are most likely contained in your CSIP. And they are detailed in some of your programming evaluations that you have. Okay, most likely you hear from in probably September. Is that when you give your map data?
We don't get the data that early. So this year
Anymore?
it was in February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we didn't get our data until December.
Talk about an autopsy. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah,
not.
we only do what we can do, right? But the important part of that is that you receiving data on your student performance is one of the most critical things that you do as a board, because it identifies where you are relative to your priority and where your district is relative to the goals that you have set. We always kind of default, if you will, to what the state of Missouri says is proficient or advanced or whatever the case might be. And that's okay, if that's okay with you. I would suggest that you really take a hard look at what is your responsibility, where do you want your warriors to be, and you identify that clearly through new CSIPs. This will be a great retreat conversation for you to both be informed and really be thoughtful about how we stretch the district into aspirations and opportunities that are here. So the board will review and approve each curriculum guide that you have. I also saw that on your agenda this evening that you've got textbooks that are an important part of that consideration as well, because that's the resource, obviously, as a part of this responsibility that you have. And the board directs the superintendent to continuously carry out curriculum development and implementation process. There's only a couple of things that are continually developed and implemented in a school district. One is budget, the other is curriculum. Okay, they're a constant process of evaluation and moving the district forward to ensure that you have the resources, but also that you're meeting the needs of the respondents that you have, the students. Okay, next slide. Judicial. So this is also an important part of this. Those of you that have had some board experience will recognize this, is that you basically set as a jury at times, okay? And you do that for certificated or contracted staff member terminations. Not all terminations, because not all terminations would require a judicial review, but some of them do, as you well know, okay? And you often, and I would say always, rely on your legal team in order to assist you in this regard. Student discipline hearings are also a part of that as well. Over 10 days are those that are being challenged. Grievance procedures, staff, public complaints, harassment, discrimination, or retaliation, right? Okay. Here's the key to this, is that you want to know what is happening in your school. You also want to make sure that if there is a conflict of some sort within the school district, of a staff member or a student or parent or whatever the case might be, that you want to be informed to be able to do that. Absolutely agree, 100%. Make sure that you judge that and provide your superintendents with, there's a line here, because we may need to be unbiased and not be prejudiced by information that we might receive, because we may in fact have to sit as a jury and deliberate on this. Okay, so there's no clear line here, but your retreats and your constant conversation with your superintendent and your legal team about these sorts of things will help provide some level of clarity. This is a line that moves all over the place in terms of, you know, how much information or is it going to go? Sometimes it's on a case by case basis. So it's really hard to get some hard and fast rules in this one. It's just important that everybody understands you have this responsibility. And at times you will require your executive team not to share information with you that could prejudice and bias you from fulfilling this responsibility.
So along that lines, this kind of ties back to we are all elected by and representatives of the patrons of our district, right? And, you know, if they have an issue, they will sometimes run directly to us for help in figuring out how to deal with that. And sometimes those can end up here. How do you recommend that we as board members deal with those issues?
Yeah. So I like the general rule of you put everything back into the system at the lowest possible level. Okay. As a superintendent, I often received calls from parents that were upset about an assignment that was given by a particular teacher or a conversation that may have occurred between a teacher and a student, right? Or between two students. Yes, I can listen, but if you really want that situation to be resolved, we have to get it in the hands of people that can resolve it. Because that's going to take not only today's conversation, but tomorrow's and the next day and the next week and the next month. So you have to enter into the system at the lowest possible level in order to be able to not only address it, but to really resolve it at that level. Okay. Then if there's continuing problems, we have a hierarchy that's built in order to address those things that might be inequitable or don't have a level of fairness that we certainly require to be dealing with our patrons and our staff members and our students. And so that's when it comes up to the change. Having a well-defined grievance procedure in your board policies should clearly state that about all complaints are registered at the lowest possible level of resolution. And it's again, when you're speaking with a patron who is generally speaking going to be pretty emotional about this. I mean, the reason why they're calling you is because they're upset about it, right? But my point is that educating them in that conversation is one of the most important things that we do. So, okay. Next. Okay. So how do you fulfill all of these responsibilities that we just talked about? Right? Okay. It's fairly simple and it's well spelled out in your board policy BBA. The board shall employ a superintendent to serve as the chief executive officer. Okay. There is a question that has a very simple answer. How many people does a board of education employ? The truth is one. It's your superintendent. Okay. You approve budget and you approve other aspects of every employee in this district. But in terms of your responsibility to hire, to terminate, to coach, to evaluate, to appraise, you have one employee. You don't involve yourself in the evaluation of staff members, of teachers, right? Those are weeds. Those are, micromanagement elements from a board. And so the way in which you fulfill all of the responsibilities that we just talked about, it's very simple. You employ a superintendent and you hold them responsible and accountable to you in order to be able to do those things, which kind of brings us back to that appraisal piece that we talked about. And that's why it's important for us, I think, to continue the conversation about what good appraisal looks like and how effective means we can write these goals so that they're specific, time bound, and we're holding not only yourselves accountable as board, but also your superintendent. I believe that's the last slide. Nope. Okay. One more. Okay. So they are responsible for all divisions and departments of the district responsible to the board for your board policy implementation. Here's an important one. They are the representative channel through which all directives from the board to its employees shall be communicated. Okay. When you make a decision about something, okay, let's say tonight you're going to approve some staff positions, okay? By virtue of your board policy CB, it's the responsibility of your superintendent to announce that directive. You vote on it, you govern it, and then you give it to one of these two people in order to execute it. Right? Your responsibility. Create, implement, and maintain written administrative procedures for guidance. Your policies are written vague enough so that they can really kind of encompass issues and times and, if you will, the movement that occurs in an environment such as a school district. You are giving your superintendent the responsibility to create other administrative rules that can assist in that board policy being followed and adhered to. Okay. Oftentimes you'll see those in student handbooks, for example, or faculty or employee handbooks and the like. Okay. Superintendent shall be held accountable to the board for all aspects of the district's administration. Okay. So if there's really something that's going on in the district that needs to be improved, yes, it's your responsibility to talk about it at the dais as a board. But in terms of either saying, we need some help in figuring this out, we want 3 ideas that can be vetted, that's your superintendents that are responsible for that. Then to bring it back, you are the decision maker, they are the executionary people. And that's the execution of all decisions made by the board, the internal operation of the school district. And here again, this is an important sentence structure to this, shall be delegated to the superintendent. So it's very clear about who is responsible for the action orientation of the decisions, policies, and the goals that we have. Okay. That was the last. Any questions?
Oh, that was easy.
That was good.
Um,
Thank you.
So with that, one of the things that Dr. White mentioned was, the establishment of goals, objectives, and reviewing the methods of financial support. With that, we would like to schedule a retreat or retreats to walk through some of that. So knowing that is scheduling a group this size is difficult. We'll have Karen send out kind of a doodle, and we'll kind of help pick some dates and kind of fill in and see on availability. We did this last year and we went back and forth and ended up on a Saturday. But that kind of allowed for a good full day of discussion. So having talked to Dr. White, Dr. Moss, and Mrs. Harwood, I think we'll seek to get that scheduled in the next couple of months so we can get some of those things lined out as we prepare for the next school year. And so with that, covering some of those board norms, walking through those establishment of goals and objectives, and as we kind of have discussed, kind of looking back the past couple years to help look forward and getting those things lined out. So with that, we will take you up on what you signed up for and look forward to additional discussion.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. On to 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services. We're only at what, 8:12, so
I will be brief. Well, we'll see. So the first item that I have to share with you, it's been a long time since I've spoken to you about VU scholarships, but if you recall, about 2 years ago, there was a gentleman whose dad worked in the Shawnee Mission School District, and he developed a spreadsheet where basically with many of the colleges in the Kansas area that are in Missouri as well, that their students were going to, he created a spreadsheet where it calculated based upon a student's GPA and their ACT score, what the standard academic scholarship would be for the kids. And so it started there. And when he retired, his son took it over, and this has kind of become his career. Well, over the years, things have evolved a bit, and they've added schools like high schools in other states, which have brought other universities and colleges from other states into this mix. So at this point, there's 50 plus colleges and universities that are part of this database. And this year, we opted to do an opt-out type of thing. So in, I believe it was in November, I sent a survey to all of the junior and senior parents, basically said, this is what the purpose of this is. This is the information we're collecting. If you don't want us to share this information with VU scholarships, then let us know. Nobody opted out. So we sent all that information, and we've had some technical glitches. So unfortunately, here it is April, and we're getting this information out to the kids this week. We'll do it earlier next year. But would anyone like to humor me and just take a guess at how much money our kids have available to them from these various colleges and universities?
300,000.
300,000? Anybody else? Whitney says up. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Price is right.
Millions.
It came in too low.
You came in way low.
Are you
Our-
talking per
our
kid or-
Now, remember, this is the money that's available to them from all of the participating. So obviously, they're not going to get all this. Almost $360 million for our
That's
juniors
what I
and
meant to
seniors.
say.
That's what then you were very close. If that's what you meant. So really excited about that. We'll be able to generate this data, as frequently as we would like to. They generate the letters for us, then we can distribute them to kids. And then the letter has a QR code, so the student would be able to scan that and go right into their account. And the whole purpose is that, I may have in my mind, because everybody in my family has a particular college, that's where I'm going. The purpose here is to let you know what? That might be a good choice for you, but look at this college over here. They'd be giving you this much more money, which would decrease your debt and just make this a better opportunity for you as you graduate and move into adulthood. So really, really excited about that. And very happy to state that we were one of the first Missouri schools that got in on that. And just grateful, honestly, that they came knocking on our door, because I think this is great information for our kids to help them make really informed decisions about the future. So that's it, $360 million. We are getting ready for assessment season. I was printing tickets today, and I'll start sorting all those lovely little things for our first week of testing. The elementary level, we're going to start the week of April 24th. And the middle school will start the first week of May. And then the EOCs at the high school will actually be the third week of May. So yeah, and it's kind of hard to believe that we're at that point in the school year. It seems to have gone really, really fast, but our principals have done an amazing job setting up the schedules. Our process coordinators and our principals have gotten me all of the accommodations, so I've been able to get those entered into the system. And what we do in my office, we do the back end of all of this for them, so that when they're testing, all they have to worry about is the actual testing dates, getting the makeups done, all of the other stuff we take care of. And that's a system that works well for us, and takes some pressure off of our buildings. Tomorrow at our admin meeting, we'll actually spend about an hour and a half going through the strategic plan and identifying metrics, responsible parties, and timelines. And our goal is to have that presented to you for final consideration at the May board meeting. So I'm excited to have that process wrapping up. It's been a very busy year. We've had a lot of unusual things that we don't normally deal with. And I think most of them we've come out very successful. So yeah, I will be so happy when you finally see that, when we get that going, and just to give us our marching orders for the next 5 years, and just knowing that we have a good plan in place as our finances change eventually with the data centers that are coming on, and that we've prioritized where we're going to put those funds. I think will help all of us feel good about moving forward there. So that is all I have, unless you have questions for me. Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 9.4, Executive Director of Support Services.
All right, thank you. Yay, right? Pass the bond. Pass the bond. So just a little history. In 2020, we passed our bond general obligation bond at 63%. And so this time around, we passed it at 68.5%. And so some could say it's about the projects. A lot of it's about the barometer of the school district. How confident does your community feel in your school district, and how are they feeling about their tax dollars, which of course is a no tax rate increase, but it still allows the district to go out to sell general obligation bonds and to fund projects. So that was super exciting. Like Dr. White said, I think we really did a great job of telling our story in multiple ways. And I think Denise did a fabulous plan of planning that out and how we're going to do that. Part of that was getting in person with groups in the community, going out and talking about it and being very honest at times and brutally honest. In one of the schools, they were very critical about HVAC and they thought more was going to be done in previous years. And she just laid it on the line and said, I understand maybe you felt like a little bit more is going to be able to be done, but I can tell you with this bond, you will have the complete package done with HVAC and all new units on that building. So I think that really helped. And then, very important as well was grassroots. I think of a lot of PTO folks, parents, groups, whether it was activities, went out and talked to somebody about it. Just let them know. Because when a lot of times people look for staff from the district to, hey, what do you know about this? And for our staff to be very knowledgeable about it, go out and tell that story and talk to people who didn't, I think really, really helped that response from our voters. And it was super excited to do that. So the next question people always ask is, well, what's next? What now? We passed it. What now? So that doesn't, get our funding. We actually have to go out to market and sell our general obligation bonds on the market. And we utilize Smithville for that. Smithville's our bond underwriter, and Gilmore Bell is our bond counsel. So those groups work together. So I want to share my screen here real quick. And I wanted to show you a document that kind of shows a good overview of what's next. And so this document, thank you, Randy. This document shows what's the first step. Of course, we passed the election. And then the next step is to work the schedule deal and to work on legal documents. So as far as the schedule goes, we use, again, Smithville as our underwriter. And looking at interest rates right now, we've been in a rising interest rate environment. But with the recent events of some local banks defaulting and going under and being taken over, we're seeing a reprieve in interest rates. So we've seen that come down on the 10-year note a couple tenths of percent. So that's really helped us realize, hey, now's a good time to go out for our general obligation bond and not to wait. So that's our plan. Of course, we'll get all the legal documents in place. And next Tuesday, we have our rating process with S&P 500. So they will look at our assessed valuation. Are we increasing, decreasing? What's our student population look like? As far as the city of Smithville, is it area is going to grow? And then look at financials like our state audit, had a good rating. First educational institution to have a good rating since 2015. They will take all those things into effect when they do our rating for those bonds. And of course, the better we're rated, the better interest rates we're going to get to sell in the open market for those bonds. So once we're going to have a preliminary official statement. And what that does is that talks about our district in detail, what our characteristics are like, and what the stipulations of the bond sale is going to look like, interest rate, term, and all those things are going to be in our preliminary official statement. So that's step 5. They're going to go out with price issuance for our bonds, look at the market, talk to basically beat the drums of everybody that they think might be interested in investing in our bonds. Because the more people we have that want to buy our muni bonds are going to drive the interest rates lower, the more interest we get. So after they do that and they actually go to sale, that's going to close the sale, and then we're going to get basically our money funded. So what does that look like as far as a date timeline goes? So I have that document for you here as well. And so you can see today we're at 4/12. We're at the board meeting. They're starting to circulate that first draft of our preliminary official statement to let people know what our district looks like, our characteristics, and how that'll look going forward. So after this week, of course, we're going to have the call with S&P 500 again to go through. And at the very bottom, before I get ahead of myself, at the very bottom, it talks about the parties involved. So you can see on the very right-hand column, it talks about the party involved in each step. Like, for example, Gilmore Bell is GMB, Smithville is SN, Smithville School District S, and who is part of each step as we go. So we'll have that call with S&P 500. They'll continue to update our preliminary operating statement. We'll receive our rating, and that will kind of really start to set in our rate and what that's going to look like when they go to sale. So the big part where the board's involved is in May, we're going to have adopt a parameters resolution. And so what we're going to ask the board to do is to sell our municipal bonds between this interest rate at the low end and this interest rate at the high end. because when they go to market, every day interest rates, change a little bit. So that parameters resolution will allow the board to say, hey, we're going to go no lower, no higher than this. And so they know when they go to market that that is where they're going to sell those bonds at. So once they have the agreement in place, they're going to basically sell those on the open market, have that of course final statement ready, and then they look to close everything on June 6th, and we'll actually get the funding then. Just talking to Joe Kendry, you guys remember Joe? Joe's the one that spoke to us a couple months ago about long-term debt and put together some of those dashboards. He really thinks our bonds will sell at a premium, which means we'll get more than 17.5 million based on the current interest rate environment right now. And so he's excited for us. And so that's where he predicts. Of course, nothing is predictable 100%, but that's kind of where he's seeing everything going. So be happy to answer any questions that I can about this. Obviously, we employ experts like Smithville, which is our bond underwriter, and Gilmore Bell, who's our bond counsel, that do this every day, all day. And so I've been in a lot of communication with them. They are great partners in that, and be happy to answer any questions I can, or if I can't, I will definitely reach out to them and get their answer.
I guess I do have a question. When we had the original discussion about what to put on this bond, we moved a lot of the HVAC up to this bond issue instead of dragging it out to another bond issue.
Right.
So my question is, I guess one point that you made at that time was that because we're doing so many HVAC units, there might be a chance for some kind of efficiency or cost savings.
Correct.
Have we had a chance to get feedback on that?
Sure. Yes.
Or is the price right now? I just know you, at the time you said it was something that we would, address later.
Right. When you mean efficiencies, are you talking like operational efficiencies as far as spending less on electrical and things like that?
I think you were alluding to the fact that we were getting so many units at one time.
Gotcha. So I do have, glad you asked that question. One of my next documents, well, it's actually down in the agenda. It's not my executive director. We did have a bid day. And so we do have the bids for all of those. And so I think they'll be able to answer your question in that agenda item on the bid day. Because we had I think at least it was 7 or 8 different bidders for our HVAC. So that's a lot of bidders for that piece. And it did come under budget for that. So I'll bring that document up during that agenda item. And I think that'll possibly show that efficiency that we were talking about. So I do have that. As far as
I just didn't know if you're going to talk about it.
Yeah. No, great question. And I will have that information for you in that agenda item in new business, which is the bid day package.
Okay.
And then my next document is, let me bring it up here real quick, our actual timeline of some of the projects. And so we have a lot of projects for this, a lot of needs. And so the first one is the bus maintenance facility. And so we are looking, and I'll kind of just give a quick overview. The details are in the document. We will basically break ground in summer of 23 for the transportation facility. Will be done in the summer of 24. So pretty similar to the War Activity Center, where we broke ground, right at the start of summer, and then we were done the next summer. So that is the schedule for the maintenance or the bus facility. The sidewalks, we're starting right away. That was part of that bid package that I have in a later agenda item. And so those sidewalks will be started this summer, completed this summer. Of course, the city is going to come in and do the rest of commercial. We'll have everything else done on campus. So that will be completed this summer. The HVAC projects will both be done this summer as far as RTU replacement. So those old RTUs will come off, new RTUs will come on. We will evaluate those all school year. And then any type of VAV, which is variable airflow, what it does is give individual control in the rooms for heating and cooling. We will evaluate that and get those added in 24. We would have loved to do all of it in one summer, but we only had a limited amount of time to get in those buildings to get it done. There's no way we could have done all the RTU replacements, get those up and function, and then get all the VAV in as well. So that'll be a 2-step process, but the most improvement will be from the RTU replacement, and we'll see that right away in the summer of 23. Security enhancements. There are a lot of different projects within security enhancements. And so depending on each individual project will be, different timelines, especially depending on back ordering of different type of equipment and things like that. So some things will be able to be implemented right away, and some will be able to be implemented over time. When I say over time, a couple months based on some back order. We'll go into more details about the security piece as we move forward, but that will depend on each individual project. But we will look to do what we can right away when we can do it. So now that we have funding.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So with the state grant money with security, how does that play into this?
Great
Well,
question.
that would be additional funds. So I outlined that in that other memo for executives since it's due to security because it mentions it, but we had earmarked around 600,000 for this. And then I wrote the grant, we qualified for $300,000. It will not be, I wish I would have wrote it on a sticky and I didn't bring it. That is going to closes Friday. They will award those by the end of the month. So we'll know by the end of the month. So basically what we're trying to do is so costly that it will just allow us to do more. The grant is only for capital things though. So just so, I mean, and this too, I mean, unfortunately, that's what's hard about it, but
You don't see that then making.
we could
efficient to do
reduce
more
this.
Security.
That's the way I was looking at it, thinking, man, we could do more is where I was thinking, but if the board chooses to reduce the amount, I mean, we could, but I think just the cost of the things we're wanting to get done, it would allow us a lot more freedom to do better.
Yeah. Give us,
And
give
that will
us,
be talked about in
Uh-huh.
executive. Yep.
Correct.
it gives us more
And I can give
resources.
you more details. when we
Yeah.
talk About, and just so the audience knows, it's not to be non-transparent. It's just when we talk about safety of schools, that's something that's protected.
Yeah, so the next project is the middle school athletic turf conversion. We will wait until fall activities are complete. They'll start breaking ground in November 23 and look to complete that project in April, May of 24. And then the high school gym is going to be two project timelines because there's so much to do in there. So this summer, they will knock out those mezzanine walls and get those demolished. It takes about 6 months once you spec out bleacher seating to get that to come in. It is 6 months in wait time on that. So once they get those knocked out, they'll be able to, see how that demolition went, see where they need to order the new bleachers and get those orders as soon as they can. And then the summer 24 is when we will come in and do the stage remodel and make that a multi-purpose space. So that'll be 2 phases as well, because we cannot get it all done in one summer. So that is the plan as far as construction timeline. So a lot of work being done this summer, a lot of work being done next summer. And we believe everything will be wrapped up and completed by the end of summer of 2024, which is, less than a year and 6 months. So another thing to think about, we've been in such a low interest rate environment that we have really not gained much interest off holding bond proceeds. But now that since interest rates has gone up and municipal bonds are tax free, there's something called arbitrage, which means we can, in theory, get more in interest than what the bonds cost us. And so because of that, there's some rules around construction timelines and how quickly you have to spend that down. So I just want to let you know about that because we haven't been in that environment recently. And so we will make sure we work closely to follow all those obligations because of the current environment we're in. So just want to let you know about that little tidbit.
And I want to add something. So internally, with Mindy as communication specialist, we debriefed on our bond communication to make sure, what was successful, was there any pitfalls or anything we could do better? And then something we discussed that we would like to do in hopes of meeting our goals of, community partnerships and being transparent is along the way, recognizing that timeline, making sure that timeline is shared out and then completed as promised, taking photos, communicating that. So our voters and our staff, everybody could see where we're at in the process, making sure people understand that it's getting done. So I just wanted the board to have that information as well.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions and super excited. It's the worst beginning, right? So the passing the bond just started everything, right? So happy to answer any questions.
That was thorough. Thank you.
All right. No, awesome. Thank you.
Very much. All right, we'll move on to 10.1 and the floor remains yours.
Is that financial review?
Yes.
It is.
All right. So on the financial review, I continue to update that from a monthly perspective, and that's really just to hit big items. You'll also notice in the board packet, we also have a third budget revision. And typically a third budget revision. Typically with the budget revision, We've done it. We do a preliminary in June. We do a first revision in October, and then wait all the way till June again to do a final. And so that's a long time between October and June to do that. And so we'd like to add another revision in there. One, to continue to update the board and make sure we're transparent with what we're looking at as we track our budget. And then two, we cannot add any type of account codes to our budget until we get board approval. And so, for example, when we get grants, when we have different things come in for funding, we cannot create that account code in our budget until the board approves it. And so we have to sit there and just put it as preliminary and put it in pencil and say, well, when boards approves the next budget revision, we can now put this in our financial software and consider it a true account code. So us by bringing this in March and April going forward and having that additional budget review, it allows us to get those account codes in. We've had a lot of grants this year. There've been a lot that have come out that we've been able to secure. And so like, for example, the ARP grant, we've added so many budget codes for salaries and different things, whether it's FICA, Medicare, that we have to have those, basically in pencil and say, okay, when the next budget revision comes, we can now solidify those. So that's a lot of the reason why we have this budget review. And we just think going forward, it'd be best to have not such a long span between October and June for a budget revision. So that is where the details are in that. That monthly financial review document is really just the big hitters, the big things that affect the budget. And we'll continue to do that. I just kind of want to explain the difference there of why. So be happy to answer any questions on that monthly budget review that we put out.
Yeah, I just appreciate the budget adjustment year to date. It's kind of tracking rolling summary. That's helpful to remember where we've been and what we've done and to how we got to where we are. It's a good snapshot. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. I think it's a great document. Maybe next year on that document, one thing that might be helpful moving forward is those are the modifications, maybe a different section at the bottom that has like an ongoing budget savings, because we have budget savings that's just ongoing from month to month,
right?
From an
Yeah.
unfilled position or whatever. But
right.
I think maybe just adding that one other extra piece would be even more informative going forward.
And of course, this budget format that we have at the very beginning, we used to just really have the working document down here. This beginning piece was brand new this year. This was the first year we had it. So this was, a lot of the key performance indicators we have in here was our first shot at this. So as there's different things that you want to see for our next preliminary budget for next fiscal year, let me know what those are. We'll be happy to get those added and just keep building on this as we go forward.
So I'm saying where we've started, since I've been on the board to where we are now, it's such a good progression.
And we can add more. And so that was our first shot at it. So as you guys want to see different things, be happy to add it. Get it in there.
Maybe just build on that one document we started last year and just make it budget savings from Fund 1 and Fund 2.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah,
Because that's our operations. So,
right.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on general financial review? All right, we'll move on to 10.2, update on enrollment.
Okay, just like last month we're down 5 from last month, but if you look at our enrollment summary from October to January, we were up, and from February to April, we were down. We're 1 student over where we were in October, but we are 5 down from last month. So pretty consistent. So.
Any questions on this one? All right, we'll move to 10.3, TIF hearing update.
Okay, so our TIF hearing has been continued to April 24th, the Monday evening, April 24th. Mr. Jacoby and I had a very long evening on that panel. Several of you attended, so thank you for your support for that. It was, I will say, a little stressful, but we're doing what we can for our district to save funding for our students. This project, we have hired Matt Webster from Smithville to work with us on our behalf as a financial consultant to give us their expertise, as well as having Drew Marriott from Ed Council supporting us and guiding us legally. And so where we're at now, just thinking, because we talked so much about it, thinking we should give the whole board a little bit of an update.
Well, and that's the tough part because it's continued. It's not resolved. So not sure
Well, I'm
there's
gonna,
much of an update. Go
so
ahead.
I'm just gonna share some things that we're still looking at. We've provided the city with some questions as far as some explanation about land purchase, what exhibits show, what fees are, things like that, some of the planning and like the due diligence, checking out the developer and things like that. So he's requested some additional information. We haven't heard anything back at this point, so those questions may be asked at the next meeting. So I think it will be a long conversation. I'm not sure where we'll act, but again, on behalf of the school district, we'll continue to advocate that we do not lose those funds for our students. It is 11% commercial or mixed use and 89% residential. And as you know, you adopted a resolution that we do not support residential TIF. And so that'll be something we continue to, advocate for the school district and for our taxpayers so that we hear an argument of those funds were meant, well, you're getting this much with this. And I'm like, yeah, without the TIF bill, we would get double that. And so again, as you know, in our community, when we depend on homes and residents to fund us, that's hard to hear as taxpayers that you don't get funds from a commercial project like that. So anything else you'd like to add?
Well, it was a packed house that evening, and maybe one thing we can do is maybe offer to host the next TIF hearing at the PAC. But it was crowded in there that evening, and maybe that's one thing we can offer up to the city. It didn't seem like there was enough sitting room for everybody in there. So
maybe, but we still, and we love having your support. Anyone that wants to show support, we would gladly see familiar faces. So, okay, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, next item on the agenda, 10.4, 2023-2024 benefits.
I just wanted, wow, that's loud. Wanted to give the board an update on where we're at for benefits for our 23-24 plan year. Our insurance plan year runs with our budget July 1st through June 30th. And so we're gearing up for open enrollment. Open enrollment will be the last week in April, first week in May for our active staff, and then the week following for our retirees who are still part of our district insurance plans. I provided for you a memo that highlighted some of the changes that we're looking at for the upcoming plan year. We appreciate that at one of the recent board meetings, the board approved the increase in the board paid cap for the medical insurance. So the board paid cap is increasing from $620 a month for employees on the medical plan to $650 per month. That enables us to provide 3 fully paid medical plans for our staff and then 1 buy-up plan for medical coverage. On our dental, we made a significant change in dental for this year. A few years ago, we brought in a new dental plan. We shifted dollars away from dental to push into medical because we knew providing a fully funded medical plan was very important for our staff. But dental coverage is just as important. We trialed a HMO dental plan. It showed some success early on, but it dwindled as the last couple of years have progressed. And so we are discontinuing the dental HMO plan, and we are refunding fully the 2 PPO plans for our staff. The PPO plans are accepted by all of our local dentists, and that was very important for our staff. And so we wanted to find a way to get back there. I think our staff, through going to each building and sharing about the changes in dental, are very appreciative that we are fully funding that base PPO dental plan again. So that's a big win that I think is going to carry a lot of weight with our staff. The next thing that we did is we had an EAP program, an employee assistance program through St. Luke's. And St. Luke's had become so overwhelmed with participants in that program with their own internal staff that they decided they could no longer serve external clients. And so they discontinued or basically terminated our agreement. And so we went out and found a new EAP program. It's with CuraLink, and that will go into effect with our new plan year on July 1. It will mirror what we had with St. Luke's. It'll still offer 6 counseling sessions at no charge for all of our employees and any of their family members for any particular reason. It could be grief, loss, anxiety, depression, some financial counseling. So it's got a lot of services on the counseling side of things. It's available 24/7, 365, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So anytime, in the moment, services are available to our staff. In addition, they also provide what we call like work-life balance resources. So let's say you are having an aging parent and you need some help finding care for that parent so that you don't have to worry about that as an employee while you're at work trying to figure out how you're going to find services. You can make a call to the EAP. They will take an intake call from you, find out what it is that you're looking for, what do you need, what's the location, what is your price point, and then they do that legwork, that research for you, and then provide you with that information. So it's a way to remove those daily hassles out of your workday so that you can focus on the task at hand and serving students. So that's going to be moving into concept July 1. Next thing is Consiglia Wellness Center. We call it the CWC. That's our clinic that's associated with our insurance consortium. And so this year, for the first time, we were able to bring a nurse on site to the district 1 day a week in order to provide some health screenings for our staff. So our biometric screenings that we encourage all staff members to do. She also will see staff members for sick visits, and then our weight loss program that we have. It's a clinical weight loss program. So next year, I've talked with the CWC, and we are going to bring a nurse on site 2 mornings a week instead of just 1 day a week. So hopefully that will also help our staff members. So if they are not feeling well and they need to come over and see the nurse, they can come over during a plan time or something like that. So again, trying to make it convenient to alleviate some of the stress of having to take time off work to go and get some care.
And that's a nurse practitioner, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
She is a nurse practitioner. The other thing, throughout our morale meetings that we had, Dr. Prattville and I had over the last several months and then throughout last summer, a lot of these things came to fruition because of the conversations that we had with staff. One of those was a request for a better vision program. So we've always offered a vision program. It's got some great options for our employees, but they wanted something more. And so we brought to the table then an enhanced vision plan this year. So they'll have the option to choose from the base plan or an enhanced plan so that they get a greater benefit out of that plan. So again, we brought that to our staff based off the feedback that we received. And then the last couple of things that I have is there are just some tweaks. We carry a product called Legal Shield. They provide legal services, but also identity theft protection. With that ID protection, they also will do social media monitoring. So we have quite a few staff members who will sign up for that because it will monitor your own personal information, but also you can make some settings so it'll look for things on social media. So if you're tagged in something you don't want to be tagged in and things like that. So we encourage people to be smart about their social media, especially working in a school district. So that's a product that we have available, and they're making some tweaks within that. It's all enhancements that'll be part of their base package. And then the last one is a new product that we're offering, and it's called Spot Pet Insurance. And on the slideshow that I've been showing to the staff, I actually have pictures of Mrs. Mellon's pet and Mrs. Hawkins' pet, Dr. Hawkins' pet. on the slideshow. So we are bringing pet insurance. It's not a payroll deduction, but it's available for our staff. It's a group plan, so you can enroll your pet at a discounted rate for this pet insurance and get the benefits of everything that that entails. I don't personally have pet insurance, so I'm going to have to check it out and see how valuable that really is. All of our other products are no changes, but we do offer the full package of hospital care, disability, long-term, short-term disability, a short-term critical illness, accident, anything that you could want, we probably offer that within the district for our staff. So just wanted to provide you with an update on our benefit offerings, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I have one, and I apologize. I should have given you a heads up.
Sure.
What is our average spend per employee on our benefits?
A little over $7,000. Yes.
Very good. Other questions? Thank you. I used to have pet insurance, and at the time I had it, was well worth it.
Really?
So,
Okay.
yeah.
People really like the pet insurance.
I
was
know.
surprised.
It's good to know.
Yeah, our little dog made good use of that plan. So yeah, you do. Any additional questions or comments about the great pet insurance benefit?
Thank you, Kim, for putting that all in one sheet so we can see that. I do think it is a great, benefits are important. Salaries are important, very important, but benefits are important too. So thank you.
And something that I highlighted on the sheet for you, but just to share, so the amount that we pay towards that medical premium that the board contributes, it is reported to PSRS and peers. So it's a factor in the salaries that are reported to the retirement system.
Which means
you have a higher salary when it comes to retirement. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 10.5, staffing request, high school extracurricular stipend.
So we have
Team.
some information that's shared with you in your packet. This was tabled at our last board meeting, and we've had a little bit of discussion around it. So this is the request for an additional assistant coach.
The request originally was for a girls soccer coach. Something that I had mentioned to the board was we didn't approve that for this school year. So looking into next year, rather than labeling it girls soccer, I thought it might be wise for us to look at the 92 comparison chart that we presented to the board prior, where we look at student to coach ratio as far as like numbers of coaches per teams, what the needs are based on that. We keep that comparison, and that could change from year to year. In an effort to ask early and try to get our request all at once, it was included in here. We can leave it as girls soccer because they did have a huge group that went out this year, or we can leave it as unnamed coach determined by the needs for next year. And I'm okay with whatever the board's prerogative is, but that's why I originally went back to unnamed, was just, I didn't know if we should wait and see what the needs really are next year as that manifests itself. This year it was boys swim and track. Well, they ended up not needing either one. They had some volunteers or different people that were replaced, part-time people that were replaced, and so they ended up not having the need. So that's the only danger with hiring it ahead or I like labeling who it is. If enough students don't go out or we don't have that need, it could potentially go away due to like the coach student to coach ratio. But what the original ask was to go back would be for girls soccer. So it can be.
Ask was that we present every possible that we might have, so it could be factored into the budget. So that's why we wanted to make sure if the need was there, that was factored into the budget.
I don't know if I made that clear or not. I tried to explain why it was unnamed, but I can answer any questions or try to.
I guess I personally like the idea of not naming it, because then if we don't need it, you don't want to have it on something and we don't need it, I guess. But
What happened if it was girls soccer and then the need didn't arise? What would happen to the fund? It
And
just
say
went
that
there.
again, I'm sorry. And the need didn't arise?
Right,
Well, we put there at the bottom, if it's determined that participation numbers don't create a need, then we just wouldn't spend that money.
right.
It would be allocated, but we wouldn't have the spend. So again, I mean, I think it has been important to look at the number of coaches per student that's been brought up this year, or determining if, you know, for example, let's say they said at one time, I think boys and girls swims at different time, but I think the coaches were assisting a little bit. So maybe there were 2 adults. I'd have to ask Mr. Schaefer again to carefully go through it. It would be something I would want him to make in coordination. You know, I wouldn't just say, here's this position, do what you want with it. That would have to be an ask. It would have to be like a submittal of, this is the proposal I need, and we would have the funds. So going through the superintendent for that need, we would need to definitely watch that versus saying, here's just this extra money hanging out, do what you want with it. We definitely want to do it by prioritize by need only. I guess my request is, can we budget in the cost of an additional coach in case the need arises again?
You know, I think I'll probably have the same question and conversation with multiple requests there. You know, it was said our budget dictates our priorities. And this is a hard and honest discussion. To look here, we can't do everything. And time again, we're saying teachers are a priority. I mean, every school board election that is said over and over, teacher pay, teacher pay, teacher pay. And these are the hard times where if we do this, we can't do that. And I'm just struggling on looking long term into next year and how we've made it clear that we do. I mean, we're low on teacher pay in the area still, even with our increase. And at some point, someone's going to have to make these difficult decisions to get our teacher pay up.
Yeah, and I shared my opinion earlier. So I would like to see it, this conversation as a part of our entire budget. So I can see how this, Ms. Carlisle's point, how this fits into our priorities going forward. So
I would like to see a specific need, like this is where we're asking for this coach because there's a specific need here. Obviously, we don't know that need, what that need looks like next year. So just trying to evaluate that on what we know today would probably be what I would prefer to see.
So going back to the previous, just so you know, we were asked to provide all needs
Yeah.
up front. So
Yep.
Yeah.
okay, that's what.
Yeah, so the administration was responding to a specific
Specific
on this.
request from this board. So if we're okay with them coming back next
Yep.
year and asking us if the need arises,
Mhm.
that would be yeah.
So kind of to a broader discussion that I think is maybe one of those items that we need to carve out some time for. You know, we all recognize that where we're at on teacher pay and where we want to get to. One, aligning out how this board would like to utilize those additional funds that we expect to come into the district to get to a certain point. Two, as has been mentioned previously, is it time to go to our voters specifically on a levy request? To that end, I know that the high school girls soccer team has an extra coach this year that is being paid for by their booster club. So we know that we have a supportive community around teachers and athletics. And so I think a discussion on going to our voters on our specific request regarding teachers is something I think is a discussion that is definitely warranted. So with this action item, it sounds like we want to delegate the authority to make the decision on what it is to our one paid employee. And so to that end, I would entertain a motion to approve a high school extracurricular stipend for whatever program it is deemed warranted for.
So move.
Your motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 4-3. Next item on the agenda is item 10.6, staffing requests, communication coordinator.
Again, you have in front of you a brief description and justification for the reclassification of the communications specialist to communications coordinator, and the details that go along with that. Dr. Pratt, Mrs. Harwood, or I are happy to answer any questions.
I think that we have shown this year that the communication specialist or communication person is doing an excellent job. I think we have got our successes out there more. I think we're doing much better with that. I know from looking at other school districts, a lot of them are even on the cabinet. The communications coordinator is even up higher on the cabinets. So I know what you guys have done is you've went out and looked at other districts and seeing where that position is. And so I think if we want to continue to do this, and we have to do community engagement, that's something we have to do. I think we need a person to do that. And I think we need to be fair to the position of where it should be. I don't know if that made sense, but.
And this is, again, honest, hard conversation. And I don't think anyone's saying that this isn't important. We know that's important, but when I said teaching and in the classroom is the priority, like, I'm going to stand by that. So
Absolutely.
And if we're gonna have this conversation and vote this evening, I just want to remind everybody that we are, 5 years removed from funding K through 12 at a 60-something% level. And now we're drifting at a 55% level. I want funding in our schools, period. All right. If we want to continue to have this conversation as far as a bigger budget, I'm more than happy to. But right now, I want to commit funds to our kids.
Yeah, so abstractly, looking across the spectrum, being on the board back when we barely passed our first bond initiative because we had poor community outreach and engagement. It was by design, this position came into being to be further engaged. So we didn't have a perspective we was chasing in the community, but in which we were educating on, which only helps us be able to achieve financial resolutions and increase funding opportunity in my mind. So I'm not going to be as narrow-sighted in terms of it's not going to impact the classroom, because that investment, I truly believe, will bring fruit into the classroom. And I think you have to keep considerations around that, because I was a part of a board when, we were being accused of, we had a financial audit that cost us $300-something thousand, or I'm sorry, I can't remember the number. 67.
$70s.
Yeah, whatever it was, that cost us money because there was a mistrust, because we had poor engagement from a community standpoint. So, Scott, I totally 100% get what you're coming from, but we also a few months back said, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to invest teacher pay. And then there's this cost consideration. Here's future money coming in. We can make this happen long term. Look at the benefits. All that was already baked in. So to me, I have no concerns because we have a priority initiative. This, to me, this is reasonable. Now, I think, as we look forward, there's going to be constraints and reprioritizations without a doubt. And, I will go back to my comments I made, I don't know, a few months ago. There's going to be a point, if that money doesn't come, we're going to have a conversation about where do we cut positions and what does it look like? I've been a part of it. I've had to do that once. It's not fun. It's not easy. But to my broader point is we had a forecast. If you guys don't know, I was the person who asked, give me all of it so I can see it all. So you can bake in what the data center might bring us and what revenue might look like. So I could have that long-term picture. All this was baked in. And with that being baked in, our forecast, even with our aggressive initiative to pay teachers, was still palatable based on what we projected to see revenue coming in. So I have no concerns with this at this time. But it is going to be a conversation to come, and I'm okay to have that conversation at another time. I mean, I'm okay to make a motion that I approve 10.6 through 10.13 as presented for approval, so we can all vote.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Hang on, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? And we'll come back to discussion.
You're saying 10.6, yes, for this one, I'd second that. I'd say second. Oh, all of them?
Because if not, we're going to do this all.
I know.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and did I hear a second?
Yes.
With that, we're now open for discussion on that.
Well, I already said my piece. Numbers are the numbers. Over the last 4 years, 2018 to 2022, we actually have decreased spending in K through 12 in this school district by $66,000. We have increased funding everywhere else, including central office. And again, I will stand by what I said earlier. I'm interested in funding K through 12 is our most direct funding of our school children.
I would say that being that this is Station I's first meeting, the preparation into the background of these requests, a couple of these items I've had the time to dive into and be comfortable voting on, and some of them I don't. And so to do a blanket vote across those, I would be opposed to that because I am not comfortable from a knowledge standpoint on voting on some of these as I am on others.
That's a fair point.
That's fair.
Patrick.
That's fair.
I should have took that into account.
I would have to be a no if we lumped them all together.
That's fair.
I appreciate Mr. Jacoby's comments. I know that there was a significant influx of funds from the federal government towards technology that has certainly caused a flip in some percentages, and look forward to a discussion around what that looks like and the ability for the entire board to view those numbers, and look forward to that discussion at our budget seminar. Based on the comments from our new members, would you want to amend your motion?
Yes.
Patrick Station, sorry, that was should have thought a little deeper, but
bring it.
yeah, I would make a motion that we approve. What's our line item that we're on, Blumker?
So would you like to withdraw
10.6.
I would like to withdraw my.
do we have a second on the withdrawal?
Second,
With that, then
go back to 10.6.
So back to the communication specialist, I don't think that anybody's arguing from what I can hear back and forth, nobody's arguing that the communication's not been a good thing for the school district. I mean, I think we can all look at the bond issue. How much of that communication came from this position, and a lot of it did, and a lot of that fell on the shoulders, and that was a success. But for me, looking at, it's not a new position, it's a reevaluation of an existing position. And I would want to know, you have listed here on this proposal, what an increase of responsibility is going to be. If we're going to take it from, and I'm not too much on the titles thing, but if we're moving and advancing it and expanding the role, if we're going to, as a school board, invest in this position, how is that going to be changed? What added responsibilities, or how is this position going to be expanded? And what are we looking at from a value standpoint with that investment?
Well, I would say some of the things that have already taken place this year, we're getting at a bargain. So it'd be compensating for some of the already additional work. Revamp the website, continuing to work with drafting emergency communications as we work through our emergency communications plan, having things ready to go, being our media outlet, things like this that you got today where we're, trying to tell our story, working with the chamber. That would be something, maybe going to the chamber meetings and networking that way with community events, adding the community foundation. We have the Smithville School District Foundation. Currently, Dr. Cranfield is leading that, and that would be something off that she would be taking off and giving to this person, working with public relations. Am I missing anything that we've discussed? Fundraising, potentially working hand in hand.
Are these new responsibilities?
The foundation would be new, fundraising would be new, and that's something I would continue to work with this person on because I'm currently over that. But as we've been dealing with sponsorships and looking into that bigger picture, it is something that's evolving into a huge discussion in our district, what to do with sponsorships moving forward. That's all new. Again, public relations, we have not had somebody in charge of public relations in the past, and so it would be adding that responsibility to work with the public and getting out there and in front of them.
Are we taking responsibilities from another job description and putting them in this reclassified position?
Well, I'm not sure if the foundation's in a job description.
It was originally with the part-time communications person, but they didn't do it. And so I volunteered to take it. It was not part of my job description either. So it's something that I've taken on as an additional responsibility.
We don't have anything currently we've done a little bit with sponsorships through human resources as far as like working at as more of wellness or sponsorships with benefits at the beginning of the school year. But again, as PTO brought on that huge sponsor drive in our community drawing funds in, we found out very quickly what that would look like. It was supposed to be a parent group, but it bled over and it was a lot of work. She did a lot of work behind the scenes. Even though we said it wasn't us, she coordinated a lot of that and helped. And so again, stepping up to do things that really weren't her part of her job. And if we want to compensate and look at, so that's what drew me into looking at other districts as we work through our strategic plan, trying to make that where it should be for our district moving forward.
Yeah. And again, the reason I want this as a part of our bigger budget conversation is that some of this stuff might be legitimate and I might be okay with it, but I want to see it reduced somewhere else in our district offices budget. And not, because this is baking in expenditures for future, right? Is there some budget item out there in our district offices that we can remove from to fund this stuff? I don't like the idea of just adding. This might be a legitimate expense, but right now we're having these one-off conversations and it's not a part of our larger budget. There are items that we could probably reduce to pay for some of this stuff, and this could be a non-issue. What we are doing is making it an issue.
One thing I would want to see is if we're redeveloping positions, especially something as important as a public relations position, I would want to see something that we're not something we want to go after, that we're restricted from going after because of a position or a time constraint. That's something that I would be really wanting to see in like position requests like this, that we really want to go do X, Y, and Z, but we're restricted from getting there because of, and this will solve that problem. That's what I would want to see, something just as a general comment, not specific to this position.
Additional discussion? You have a request before you. Do I have a motion to consider this one way or the other?
So moved.
How would you like to consider it?
Oh,
Do you want to approve it? Do you want to table it?
You're up. If you don't make a decision, I will make a motion to continue it.
Just go ahead. I don't know what to do anymore.
I'll make a motion to continue.
To table this?
Yep.
We have a
All of
motion to
them or
table.
just this one?
Just this one.
Do we have a second?
Well, is there any,
Hang on, we need a second so we can have a discussion. Sorry, Robert's Rule of
I
Order.
would second.
We have a motion, a second, now additional discussion.
I was just gonna say that for time, do you have any others that you would want to see lumped into that category?
For continuing,
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem having a
Right.
conversation at another time.
Yeah. do we have the list?
Just go
What
through
I
each
don't want to
one.
do is painfully go through this every single one.
Right. Understood.
If we have to.
Do we have the list up? We had it up here earlier. Yeah, 10 point.
In front of you?
Right there, to keep going down. Yeah.
I mean,
Karen, I
we
think
just
you're in the voting.
I am, but I have a question. You amended the motion.
Yeah.
And
I withdrew.
And we had a
you
second.
withdrew
withdrew.
and then amended those, didn't
No,
you?
no, we withdrew.
Just withdrew.
So we're,
Okay.
we're clean into this emotion, this motion.
So we have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second to table this one.
Who was the second, please?
I say we just keep going through each one or else we're just gonna argue. Let's just keep, I mean, if we have to argue on each one, if we table each one, then we table each
Well,
one.
what I'm getting at is, let's get to the
Yeah.
tabling conversation. If there's any more to consider, let's do that right now.
Okay. I'm okay with counselor. That would be the next one. If you want the list.
Well, we're gonna have to, we'll have to take this one individually as it
Okay.
stands on the
Let's
motion
do
now.
this.
And then
I get
Mrs.
discussion.
Harwood.
Well, I guess I would like to know what information you need from administration to provide you to help you make your decision so I can prepare. I heard you say expenditures to remove.
Correct.
So from where?
From accounts 2311 or greater through 2999.
Essentially anything not allocated directly to a building. Educational building.
Something we have in this year's budget is our audit expenses from the state that we will not have next year in that 2311. We also had a search firm for superintendent.
Yeah, she's just saying where to remove it
Sure.
from. There's gonna be accounts in
And
that.
strategic planning was 2231. So those are accounts that would be a lot less next year due to not having those items.
range. Just,
Want some clarity?
just that range. There's some kind of reduction in those accounts.
We'll have that natively.
Is that all support staff or what does that include? I don't know the specific accounts.
So this year we employed a search firm for superintendent. And we also had strategic planning firm. They came in. We also had $76,000 payment to the state for an audit. And so you'll see all three of those removed next year in next year's budget.
But when you're talking K-12,
No,
is that not,
so-
I don't exactly know what you mean when you're talking K-12.
So from accounts 2311 to 2999, the accounts that we have funds in is Board of Education Services, Executive Administration Services, other Executive Administration Services, Administration Technology Services,
So the
Office of Principal Services.
generalized, Susan, not operationally within an educational building like the elementary schools, middle school, high school, anything outside of that is what he's referring to.
But we just heard principal's office, right?
Yeah, there's a whole list. If you wanted me to keep going, it's
That's good.
about 20 accounts.
That's just the gist.
There's somewhere in there might be $10,000.
Okay.
Or $15,000. And these accounts have hundreds of thousands of dollars. If not millions in some accounts, okay? So this is not an unreasonable request because the dollars we're talking about are minimal.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor
Table it. Right.
to table this one. Any additional discussion on this one? If not, please vote. Again, the motion is to table this discussion until a future date. Motion carries six in favor and one opposed. Next item on the agenda, 10.7, the counselor positions.
I'll let Mrs. Harwood speak to this.
This is something that DESE put out. They put out an immediate responsive services grant to districts to apply for. This grant does not cover the full cost of a counselor. Our elementary counselors are who brought this to my attention and advocated. Dr. Marchetti was working with that group as well. We were trying to be very cautious on how we handled this because we do have the Children's Service Fund grant where we work with therapists hiring. We've had some turnover in those groups. Now we are filled again as of late for moving forward, but this would be assisting our school counselors and probably not providing those responsive services because ethically for kids, you would want them to have that same contact. But what that could do is free up our counselors from teaching lessons. This person could work between the 3 elementary schools to teach some lessons and allow more responsive time for our counselors to work with kids. It's only a 1-year grant and they're well aware of that because I wanted them to be aware, like if we do this, this is something that could potentially only be for 1 year. We were awarded, I believe, $44,083. And we look at this position being about $15,000 more than that because it is a master's level position. So that's an approximation of the request.
And it would be a 1 year depending on getting the grant.
Well, I don't know if the grant is only a 1-year grant potentially.
So the next year we would have to, if we keep that position, absorb the whole position.
Correct. Or see how it goes. That's kind of where I put it with the counselors. Let's see how this goes. Is this really giving you what you think it's going to as far as relief? Is it going to be more work? You know, trying to navigate between 3 buildings. They know it's temporary and whoever we would hire, we would let them know this is for 1 year at this time and a trial at that just to see if it's meeting the needs.
Okay, that's what I was, thank you.
Is there potential for renewal on that grant or is it a strict 1
You
year?
never know with
Okay.
DESE. They're saying it's 1 year right now.
Okay.
They are sitting on some money, but I can't say.
That's not firm though, that there is or isn't.
Well, they've told us it's 1 year. They said transportation was going to be funded for 1 year. Now they're saying it's more too. So I really can't tell you. I'm only going to count on it for 1 year though, because I don't want to be disappointed in the end. And again, we want to see how this benefits too.
Yeah, and I understand we have counselor to student ratio issues, so I'm okay with this, you know.
Is that a motion?
I make a motion that we approve 10.7 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Did you, wait, hold on, did you say 10.7 or 10.6?
10.7.
Keep up, Scott.
Oh my gosh, sorry,
Sync.
bad one.
It didn't sync. Mine didn't move either.
Yeah.
Stacia.
Okay. I'm with you.
Any further discussion on this one?
Just want to reiterate, I understand the importance of this. But
Healthy dialogue is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
We are representative of the community and that's okay.
My thought is that the support staff for the teachers and the support staff is so important. The teachers can't do what they're doing if we don't have the support staff also. So that's where I think of some of that too. I'm very much thinking of the teachers, but I'm thinking of the other people that do a lot for our kids too.
I've seen it firsthand this year with my daughter having a difficult classroom situation, and the counselor is extremely important and helpful to that, but she's also burdened with a lot of that throughout the buildings, and that's only growing that concern. So I see this as directly benefiting our students.
Good enough. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 6 in favor, 1 in the negative. 10.8. Staffing request, executive administrative assistant.
Yes, so our executive administrative assistant serves the superintendent of schools and also the Board of Education. Currently, with all of the responsibilities of that role, the position is non-exempt and has over the last 2 years been accumulating additional hours on an annual basis. So we're looking to restructure this a little bit, stipend the Board of Education secretary position move from a non-exempt to an exempt category, so we're not running into overtime. And then also paying for a cell phone stipend for open communication with the superintendent and the board president.
Again, the point is that I'd like to continue the rest of these positions being requested this evening. Except for 1013, I understand that's a reading aid instructional assistant. That I would not expect cost savings from those accounts. The other, does that make
Well,
sense?
Yeah.
Yes, but for all the other, because I figure you're gonna ask, right? Yeah.
Well, that's why.
Figure- Yeah, figure you're gonna ask. All the other positions there, I would like central office to try to find cost savings to fund those positions through 1012.
On this particular position, this actually would be a cost savings to the district. We have to put the expense of this realignment of the position. But with the accumulation of additional hours because of the workload, we actually would be paying an additional $7,000 a year in overtime pay. And so by restructuring the position, we're actually saving close to $6,000.
I was just trying to follow Mr. Saxton's instructions after we got done with that one to table the rest. But if we want to go ahead and vote on this one, and then I'd make a motion to table the rest, that's fine.
And I would
So,
personally object to tabling the rest because I believe 10-9 is something that we need to make happen and important to support not only the
Okay.
district, but also from a retention perspective.
okay.
Kim, now, is that due to the unique year that we had with that position that you're saying it would be an additional 7,000 paid out in overtime?
So over
Next year, we're not gonna have all those hours, correct?
Well, so when Donna White retired from the district, she was in that position for many, many years. As Karen came into the position, there's always going to be a learning curve. So you're going to have some things take longer than they may have taken in the past. What we have found is that actually with Karen's skill set and using technology more, she's actually more efficient at the work that she does. But just the workload in general is larger. Part of that is attributed to, we had the state audit that played a role into it. We've had a superintendent search that, took a lot of hours and time. We have additional board meetings now that we have our program evaluations on different nights. And so looking at the way we work now as a district versus the way we worked previously, we just sometimes need to make updates with the way a position functions. It actually will be a cost savings to the district in the long run to do this. We can't be out of compliance with Fair Labor Standards Act and not pay overtime if overtime is there. Currently, we're encouraging flex time, but we do pay out if so many overtime hours are accumulated. So this actually will be a benefit to the district, and we're fortunate that, we're able to look at this restructure. So I think some of it may fall off, but not all of it. 250 hours, averaging additional hours is, you're not going to have all of that fall off because of different circumstances.
So you're saying it's a cost savings, but it says it's additional cost to the district.
Yeah.
In the description.
Because when we look at what I did in preparing this, and Robert may have a different take from the full budget, but when I look at this, by adding the stipend for board secretary, that currently wasn't in our listing. So that is an add to our salary schedule, the supplemental pay schedule. But when we look at the overall spend for that, if we pay overtime in lieu of a stipend, paying the overtime is going to cost you more than paying the stipend.
Okay, do we want to take those individually or do we want to try to clump the ones together that we are?
But we're adding a cell phone stipend here. What does that have to do with overtime?
That has to do with using her personal device for district communication. She does that on a regular basis.
Anything that adds cost, of course, everybody understands where I'm at. I think central office should be tasked with the idea of trying to find cost savings in those accounts to offset this. I'm confused by this explanation, given that it says in here that there's an additional cost. If there's an additional cost, I expect cost savings somewhere to pick this up.
If I understand what you're saying, even that stipend, then when you lump it all together, the $1,720 is less than what we were paying out in overtime. Is that correct?
I think the additional cost is what's on paper because you don't figure overtime as part of your budget. Does that make sense? Is that how you can say it? Like,
You can't, okay,
I'm gonna make a motion.
does that make
We
sense?
approve 10.8 as presented.
okay.
We have a second.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this one?
Cost savings.
Hearing none, please vote.
I guess.
More money.
Motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda, 10.9, Family Resource Specialist. I do believe that this is one we need to consider this evening. Um,
I agree that the position is very important to the district. Again, I would just say if we're going to approve it, the central office is tasked with trying to find cost savings going forward.
But we already approved 350,000. So how do we go back on that? Is that right? I mean, am I wrong? Earlier when we did that?
In March, we approved
We approved.
350,000 and this
That
is the
can go to-
breakdown.
That's not the final budget. We said that in that discussion that
Yep, we
evening.
did.
So this is the one by one going through the 350. These are these discussions.
So it was approved to spend $50,000 on staffing.
Based
Correct.
on a 5-year projection with the incoming revenue over the next 5 years, and we all walked away feeling comfortable. Now we're
So-
diving very much into
The one thing I would say from this being my first meeting, and I understand what we talked about in regards to getting data back on needing to add additional positions, but 350 was approved and there's more than 350 on this list.
Correct.
So I just put that out there that 350 was approved, but this request is more than 350.
Correct.
So we're going over what we approved. So that's just where my head's at, is trying to understand that.
No, you're very true.
Correct. And then we will have a final approval of the budget in June or whenever.
So what
we've
about some of
approved
these
350
positions?
And we're already going over it. To Scott's point, if we're already going over what we approved, we're spending more than we approved right off the get-go. So somewhere there has to be some cost savings. Right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at is I'd like to see the big picture instead of what we're doing, but that's,
At the same
So
time,
it
that meeting
comes
in
back
March.
prioritizing the list. If we're approved for 350, what on this list is a must and not a must to get this list down to what was approved? That's where I would say my head would be at, is if we're approved for 350 and that was previously decided, and some things have changed where I definitely agree there's a lot of important things on here, but those things push us over 350. What's less important on here to get us back down to 350 is one thing I would consider. I'm not saying that this is wrong that we would go over that, but just from face value, I would say that there probably needs to be some prioritization on this.
and right, I agree. but if we wanted to pass, if you felt comfortable and feel like this position is important and it's well, they're all important.
Priority
Priority.
over other
Yeah.
Right.
positions.
Again, the family resource specialist, there's only one individual doing that work. The cost is $2,700, $2,721. I'm okay with passing it, but I would like to see feedback that we found cost savings in these accounts to fund this.
Something if I could
That's all
mention,
I'm asking.
something I could mention on the 350. So when we give these estimates on positions, we give an average. So let's say, for example, technology help desk technician. We don't know if that person we're going to hire based on interviews comes in at the very first step or comes in at step 17.
Sure.
So based on benefits and everything, we try to give an average.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is estimates until we actually hire, if that position was approved, actually hire that person. We would know the exact cost until we place them on the salary schedule based on previous experience. So a lot of this is a moving target based on who you put in the position and how those go. So that 350 was just an estimate at the time.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to that March discussion. We made some strategic investments based on projections that had been heavily worked on and gone through in great detail on what we thought the next several years would look like. I think this is a continuation of that discussion on where does this board want to make strategic investments. I believe that this is an important position and particularly from a retention standpoint that the board needs to act on this one this evening. So I will make the motion to approve 10.9 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Next one up is 10.10, substitute rate of pay.
I have the information in front of you. We are trying to be competitive with surrounding districts on substitute rate of pay. We proposed a little bit of modification here and separating out some of our different rates of pay for our substitutes. Currently, we pay $100 per day. Surrounding districts are increasing theirs to $130 per day. We thought that was too aggressive for us. We typically use local community members to come in and substitute. So we're asking for an increase to 120 per day. For nurses, it's a skilled, they need a license in order to serve in that position. When we don't have substitutes for our nursing staff, we use a agency. They typically have a very high markup. And so we end up paying a lot more than we would when we have our in-house nurses substitute. So we're asking for an increase of $30 to $130 a day. Support staff, long-term substitutes. So we have in place long-term substitute rate of pay for someone who is subbing for a certificated staff member. So a teacher who's on extended leave for FMLA, maternity leave, whatever it might be. We do pay them an increased rate after day 10. So starting on day 11, they receive a higher rate of pay because they assume all the responsibilities of that classroom. Well, we also have support staff who go on extended leave and they serve our students, not in the same way that a teacher does, but they also do important work. A lot of times they work with our special education students or our behavior students. And so when we have a support staff member who is out for an extended period of time, a lot of times they'll have different substitutes come in and sub for them instead of having that consistent person for that extended period of time. So we're asking for a support staff long-term substitute rate of pay to go from 100 to 130 on day 11 to mirror what we do with our certificated staff. And then retired teachers in the classroom is a big win. If you can have a retired teacher come in and be a substitute, they already have classroom management skills. They have those instructional skills. And so a lot of districts pay a higher rate for retired teachers to come in and be substitutes in their district. So we're proposing a higher rate of pay for retired teachers who become substitutes for the district. So that is what we're proposing for modifications with our substitutes rate of pay. This does have a direct impact on our students in the classroom.
Is our fill rate like 84% or something I saw?
It's been hanging in the low to mid 80s.
But that's with a lot of admin and other people going in and filling. I was talking to the lady that does our curriculum for math, and she said she couldn't really do her job last year because she had to fill. She was a substitute basically. And so to me, that helps our students and helps our staff, because if they don't have to go on their plan period to go cover, or you have an admin covering, I don't know. This one I think does help staff.
It's a hard one
It's hard.
because, you know, we want to push dollars into those salaries. But we have teachers that come to us that say, I feel guilty if I have to take a personal day to take care of myself or one of my family members because I don't know who's going to cover my class. So, you know, the substitute game has been a hard game to play over the last couple of years or so. I think it's getting better. But for us to continue to be competitive, we have to compete with the surrounding districts. And so it's very easy for someone to drive, you know, 10, 12 minutes down the road and make an additional $30 per day. So we just want to bring and keep those substitutes that we have that are willing to work with our staff and students.
I'm not too interested in increasing the pay for substitutes right now. $60,000 is a lot. That's a classroom teacher. We might have less absences if we had reduce our class sizes in some locations. I'd be interested in a smaller request, but I'm not sold that just increasing pay solves our issue. Again, $60,000 is a classroom teacher plus, so.
And I agree with you. And that's an estimate. We don't know for sure. We're going off of substitute rates from the past couple of years. How many substitutes have we had? So if we don't have as many substitutes in the upcoming year, that cost would go down. This is tied to our annual leave day buyback rate for our certificated staff members. So one of the ways that we try and encourage staff to hold on to days if they don't need them for a legitimate reason and not to burn them per se, is to tie that to a substitute rate of pay. And so that can have an impact on it. And it's kind of a roll of the dice. We hope that it would help on both sides, decreasing absences and increasing the number of quality substitutes in the district. But I can't sit here and tell you for sure that I know that that's the case.
So this was proposed like last fall right? Is there been a improvement or decrease in that fill percentage since the original request?
It's been hanging around the low 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Scott. When we're making these decisions, good decisions to spend money on and maybe better, an additional teacher that's a lot smaller class sizes for our kids. So, yeah.
I move that we, how do I say it? I move that we approve this staffing request or as proposed. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion so we can vote on any additional discussion. Hearing none, please vote. Motion fails 2-5. Next item on the agenda is 10-11. There had been discussion about maybe clumping a couple of these together. If that is the interest of the board, I would be open to such a motion.
A motion that 10.11 and 10.12 be continued and discussed at a later date.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I know I made this comment before, but the relative to 10.11, I just want to make a comment that information packet that was put together was extremely informative and detailed as to a justification for the job. So I just wanted to point that out. Somebody that was really trying to understand a lot of this very quickly in a short amount of time. This specific packet was extremely helpful. And I know that this type of data is not available for all staffing requests. So a tech job is definitely unique to that. But the level of detail and the amount of information in here was extremely helpful to get up to speed quickly. So I just wanted to point that out.
Did we approve that, or can we talk about it now?
You can talk about it now.
I just want to say, let's don't wait. Can we not wait a long time? Because we need to make these decisions, and these are decisions that we're going to have to hire somebody and get going. So, I'm okay with tabling it, but let's don't wait until June. If we wait until June, we're never going to be able to hire somebody, is my thought. But
Have our budget workshop scheduled, right?
Our budget workshop is in May. I can't remember the exact date,
second,
May 2nd. So we have that about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. So is there any information that you'd like to see? I know Mr. Jacoby talked about some of those funding accounts from 2321 to 2999. Like our safety security officer and SRO is part of that group. Our transportation, special ed transportation and food service is part of that group. So I do know that those, have been areas where contracts have increased due to inflation, things like that. So those are a clump of that. So that way I could kind of show maybe how those accounts increased and why in those areas during that budget, or anything else you'd want to see during that May budget workshop that I can give you.
I'd encourage board members to reach out to Mrs. Harwood and Mr. Hedgecorth to make sure that their questions are addressed before that meeting, so we can make decisions at that time.
For which meeting?
The budget workshop on May
Okay.
2nd.
Gotcha.
Any further discussion? So the motion in front of you is to table 10-11 and 10-12 until the May 2nd budget workshop. Hearing no further discussion, please vote.
And then the voting yes to
table it.
To table.
To help with that. Oh, sorry.
Motion carries 7-0.
To help with some of those decision-making, tying it into this, can we have everything from classroom sizes to, everything in that budget to really prioritize and know where?
Well, I can give you classes, but I don't know what everything, I'm not trying to be, I just need to know what else, because I don't know what that means to you.
Okay.
So
We can-
yes, specifics would be great like that. I can happily give you whatever you ask.
Next item on the agenda is 10-13, reading aid instructional assistant.
I make a motion that we approve 10.13 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. Will this be, will they, who am I talking to? You? Okay. Will they be trained in the take
Yes.
flight?
Not in take flight, because you have to have a master's degree for that, but they will be trained in the other programs related to that. That are one-day trainings that can be easily implemented by someone who wouldn't necessarily have a degree. So, but yes, they will be trained.
To free up that trained
Yes.
person to meet with those kids. That's
Yes, so
the
that,
trade-off.
so the trained Jocelyn would be able to work with all the kids who need take flight, because she wouldn't have to work with any of the others.
the ones who don't have that specific need,
Correct.
but just need a reading
Yes,
aid.
correct.
Jocelyn is middle school.
She's middle school.
But she said at the March meeting that she is unable to handle all of the, because she's also at Horizon, correct? She's
Yes.
going to Horizon.
She's actually given me all the groups that she's currently working with. And knowing the groups that are coming up to her from the elementaries, she's a little bit maxed out. She may be able to help for one session at the high school. But we have kids going up to the high school who are getting tier 2 interventions, and no one at the high school is trained to do that. So I envision this aid going between the middle school and high school, providing extra support at the middle school as well. And honestly, you guys, I really think, and I think I mentioned this last time, I think this is a short-term need for us. I believe that as we're catching more and more kids at the elementary level, we're not going to see as many that need this kind of support as we come up. It's just that we trained all of these people all at once, and they're finding the kids who need their help. And so we have quite a few right now that we're needing to service and provide support to.
Did they pay for the
Yeah,
training?
and we're
lesson?
paying
We
for,
paid
we're
it?
paying for this one too.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is 11.1. So with these, I had the opportunity to speak to several of you who expressed interest. So in interest of helping moving this along, I'll make some motions on this, and then we'll see if how the board feels. So based on MSBA delegate and alternate, I am the current one, and Denny was our alternate. Mrs. Carlisle has expressed an interest, so I would make a motion that I remain the delegate and Mrs. Carlisle be the alternate on this.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. And I'll ask her when she frees up. Next item on the agenda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. It's understandable. Bye.
Stop by and see us in the morning.
Bring coffee, please. Bring
Get that
coffee.
for a second. Bring donuts.
Yeah, coffee.
Coffee's with it.
I don't drink coffee, so
Oh.
tea would be fine.
Mud water.
Cornerstone opens at 6.
Next item on the agenda, 11.2, consider a representative city council, school board liaison committee. Previously, Mr. Haggerty, Mr. Saxon, Mr. Jacoby. Mr. Nichols is interested in that, so I would motion that Mr. Nichols, Mr. Saxon, and Mr. Jacoby serve as our representatives to the liaison committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Sorry, Karen, I'm trying to help you, but motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.3. Representative to the Smithville Education Foundation. So the board president and one member of the board serves. Mrs. Whitaker serves in that position, would like to continue. So I would move that the board president and Mrs. Whitaker continue in those roles.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is a representative to the Drug Free Community in Action Committee. Mrs. Carlisle currently serves on that. Mrs. Cudd is interested in filling that role. So I would move that Mrs. Cudd be the representative to the CIA.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. 11.5, representative to the District Wellness Committee. Mrs. Whitaker currently serves in that role, and I would move that she continues in that role. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I will note this is a subcommittee of this board, and therefore we have to take minutes and notice up likewise.
Now I know.
Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Would folks like a quick recess? All right, next item on the agenda is 11.6, MSBA 2020-23 A policy updates for first reading. Point of information here, we are required to give 3 readings to any policy we implement. There's one of these policies, community engagement, that requires we have a plan in place by July 1st. So we need to move on these this evening. I am very much aware that these policies, as they sit at the moment, do not reflect the wishes of this board nor of our community, and would strongly suggest that we have additional discussion and maybe even a group who kind of works on Smithvilleizing these and creating a community engagement plan that is cohesive to our district and our environment. The public participation at board meetings is completely against what I personally believe. And I would not be in favor of adopting either one of the recommendations from this. However, in order to move this forward, I would move that we approve these on the first of 3 readings, which we have opportunities at those additional readings to make changes and edits to. And would suggest that we spend some time on getting these done appropriately. So
Can you motion, Jeff, with the consideration that we are going to do revisions?
So I would move that we adopt them for the first reading with a clear understanding that we are going to make these fit for our district and our community.
Are you
So
creating,
hang on, we have a motion on the floor. Can I get a second? Sorry. We have
Second.
a second.
are you creating an ad hoc committee to work on this? Is that what
I think it might
thought
be
I
a good
heard?
idea.
I think we can do that.
I don't see why not. I think creating ad hoc committees is generally a good idea.
Yeah, and I think your concerns are 100% warranted. After reviewing it and kind of looking at it after some additional conversations, 100%.
Now, I do appreciate the agenda that public can put things on the agenda. Is that the part that you're concerned about?
No, but the suggestion that the public has to go through 85 different steps before they can speak to this board.
Yeah. But we just went over our public comment
Correct.
policy, so could we keep that? And you're saying merge?
Yes.
all-
Right.
Yeah, there are some things that we have to do required by law. For example, the organ donors, we have to give them 30 minutes at our board meeting should they request.
Where did
Um,
that come from? Can
Thank you, Jefferson City, for deciding that
That's a lot
what
of
is,
this.
what each local jurisdiction should do. They love it when DC does it to them, so they get to do it to us. Yes, I'm on the record, and is my mic on? Do I need to say it louder?
I provided to you just some notes. These are just notes. I went to a law conference. This is 2 attorneys from Wynn Mundorf. And at the MASA conference, I went to a session about this. So this is just some thoughts from there, just to give you more information. So take it as you will. And just reminding the group as well, for the community engagement plan, you have to have community input on that as well.
Correct. We have a motion and a second on the floor. If the board is okay, I will appoint a subcommittee, probably Mrs. Carlo and Mr. Saxton, to work with me on bringing these updated to our standards and then bring it back to the board for consideration during the second reading. Excellent. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Hopefully that went a lot faster than you expected it to.
I was ready.
Motion carries 7-0. So again, we will work on making these Smithvilleized and fit the wishes of our district. The next one on the agenda is for the first and only reading, so a tweak of an existing policy. Is this the floor yours, Dr. Catterfield?
So this actually is a result of the, actually, it's been something we've been thinking about for a while, but because we are investing about $9,000 per person in the teachers who are going through the take flight training, This would ensure that we get at least 3 years of service based upon that investment. And if someone would, leave the district, retire, resign, whatever the case may be, before that, then there would be some payback for what we've invested. Not just this program, by the way, when we train PLTW teachers, our Project Lead the Way program at the high school, for those of you who are new, we have an engineering branch and we have biomed. It's $2,400 of training, and it's not uncommon for several years. I mean, we've been lucky for the last 3 years. We've had the same biomed teacher, but we turned over teachers in that program every year for 3 years straight, and we had to pay for 2 trainings. So that was almost $5,000, and there was no way to recoup that. So basically anything over the $2,000 mark, there would be a contract, which we're asking MSBA to develop for us as well. And it would just ensure that if you leave at the end of the first year, then you're paying it all back. If you leave at the end of the second year, you pay half of it back. So we'll get 3 years of service based upon that investment. And all of the teachers who are going through the CALT training, we told them that we're proposing this and they're expecting it, and they're all okay with that. So it won't be a surprise to them.
I'll make a motion that we approve 11.7 as presented for the first reading.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.8 supplemental pay for April 2023. This was removed from our consent agenda. Mrs. Carlisle has a 6 degree of separation family member on this list. So with that, she will be abstaining from this vote.
Make a motion that we approve 11.8 as presented.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 6-0 with Mrs. Carlisle abstaining. Thank you all very much. 11.9, approve the board self-evaluation workshop minutes. Our new board members are not in attendance on this one, so we pulled this from consent agenda as well.
Make a motion, we approve 11.9 as presented.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 5-0 with our 2 new board members abstaining. Thank you all very much. Next up, 11.10, textbook resources for K-5 science.
In the memo, I provided a description of the process that we went through in order to evaluate resources. These comments go for the next item as well, which would be the 6-8 science adoption. They actually are going with 2 different vendors, which is fine. The standards are covered. The Discovery meets the needs of our elementary better than the Amplify does. It also will give our kids some variety. Right now, from K-8, they're going through Amplify, and the kids get a little bit, it's a little bit too much repetition for them as they go through the grade level. So I think that'll provide a little buffer there as well. Our teachers requested that right now they share kits, their science kits per grade level in a building. They requested that everybody get them, and they have their own, and that we can make that work with the funds that we have available for next year. So we will also have professional development at the beginning of the year, so our teachers get acclimated to the system. And then some have even asked for some floating PD opportunities this summer where we could explore a little more as well. So we'll have lots of support for the teachers. Renee Wilcox, who is our K-8 science facilitator, will be available to help provide additional support for them as they get into this program next year as well.
I just want to comment that last year, our curriculum night was on science. And heard feedback from our community, and our teachers and staff did a phenomenal job presenting the curriculum, what it looked like. We got hands-on and to walk through. And so that feedback then encompassed into this with the recommendation for us this evening. So as we talk about community engagement, this is part of our efforts. So.
I'll make a motion that we approve 11.10 as presented.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. And if you haven't figured out if you want to have further discussion, you need to butt in. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.11, textbook resources for 6 through 8.
I move that we approve as presented.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.12, FY23 third budget revision.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So you have two PDF documents in that agenda item. One is the actual revision document that is more broad-based, more overview, some narratives about this year's budget and how it's tracking. And then you have the working copy that actually has each individual account code based on either function or object related to that. So you have two different documents. That way you can kind of easily navigate between the two. In our preliminary budget, when we first started this format, we have this cycle. And so with this cycle, it talks about how we have our preliminary budget in June, and then our first revision is in October. Well, this revision is actually something new. This is something we'd like to add going forward, probably in March next year, because April is such a crazy time of year with possible elections and stuff, but in March. So that way we have something between October and the end of the year to let you know how we're tracking. Some things that we know right now in March or April that we didn't know in October is our local revenue. So, everybody gets their local tax bills. It's time to pay that bill in January. Well, some people pay that bill on time and some people don't. And so if they pay that bill on time in our local funds, that goes into that account. But if it doesn't get paid on time, it's in delinquent taxes. So when this time of year comes around, we know better which bucket or which account number to put those things into. And so, yes, do we still get that funding? Absolutely. But we do have to change that account code or the item budgeted for that. And so as you look through the working copy, you're probably saying, well, Robert, which ones changed before and which ones didn't? Am I just supposed to look at the last budget revision and look at this number and figure it out? Well, we highlighted it if it changed or if that account code was added. So, for example, if I go to one in our working budget, I'll just see if I can find one quickly here on our expense side. I should have had one ready. This one, let me bring it up real quick here. Bring up the color document. This one's black and white, so it's hard for me to see. So, for example, if you look at the very first page on delinquent taxes, you can see that amount is in green, and so that means that account amount is modified from last budget revision because we know better what our delinquent taxes are collection than we did in
You want to
October.
clarify what you mean by delinquent taxes?
Sure. So when you get your
We're delinquent on our taxes.
Great point. So when you get your tax bill, it comes at the beginning of the year, right around Christmas when everyone's loaded with money. You also got to pay that personal property tax and that real estate tax. And so you have until a certain time to pay that. The county did extend it this year because they got them out late. But once it goes past a certain point, you have to pay penalties for however long you are late. So the longer you're late, the more penalties you have. And then that goes into a different account code, whether it's delinquent or paid on time. So that is something that we track within our budget. You can see the MMM surtax. We actually got that collection. And so there's been a lot of talk about Clay County and their surtax and what that means for next year. But we actually got that collection. So we knew better what that account was going to be based on estimates. And so earlier in the year, there are a lot of estimates. You're estimating what your student enrollment is. You're estimating what your state payment is. You're estimating, Prop C, which is a sales tax piece from the state. And as the state starts collecting those monies, they make better predictions about what you're going to get as a district. And so as we get those numbers, we continue to update those in our budget and going forward. And that way that's reflected here for you to look at in this budget revision. So we will have one more budget revision again at the end of the year. That's a final. Some things I wanted to bring up as we finish out this school year. There is still a lot of expenses to be had. We still have salary expenses for April, May, June, July, and August. We pay certified staff out through August. We also have summer school coming up, so we have those expenses as well. And then we have all of our different supply accounts. And so I can see what we spent up to date, and we do ask administrators to spend. If they are going to spend it for this year, go ahead and spend it already by March 15th so we can make more adjustments. But we do have to keep those things open and not just take that money back, because there are things that could happen. And so it's always an estimate. We're always looking about where our balance would be. And so if you look at the very back of the summary budget, I give a narrative of where we're at. And so you can see the first narrative talks about if, of course, if the bond hadn't passed. Well, it did. So we're going to be able to pay ourselves back. So right now we're looking at a deficit of funds in 10 and 20 is 143,385. Well, what does that mean? Well, for a household budget, that's a lot of money. But when you have a operating budget of anywhere from 34 to 35 million, taking out Fund 4 and capital project construction, you're looking at 1% off in your budget being about 350,000. So we're even half of that. We're half of 1% in the negative, which is pretty darn close to a balanced budget where we're seeing it right now. So that's what we predict. Of course, I mentioned a lot of things that are still to come in this fiscal year and things that can happen. Another one is career ladder. We have planned for career ladder of what we're going to pay out, but teachers don't turn in their hours until the end of the year. So we won't know the exact amount until that end of the year. So it is constantly trying to hit a moving target, constantly trying to take data in and look at your environment and update as we go. And so, again, a lot of the things that you see in here, one of the big reasons is we want to be able to get those account codes in SUI, which is our financial software program, to be able to put that in the budget so people can actually assign values to those. And we simply can't do that until the board approves a budget revision. So be happy to entertain any questions that you have about this budget revision and any questions or concerns.
What all falls under Board of Education Services for 541,000?
Yeah, so Board of Education Services has a lot of different things that it catches. So let me go to that. So off the top of my head, I can tell you that it's our workman's comp insurance. Our workman's comp insurance is put in the Board of Education 2311. Why? Well, it's from the DESE manual. That's where we put that. It also has like MSBA fees. Let me go there real quick.
Robert, you
Yeah.
said, I asked you that question earlier.
Yeah.
And he said ESIP payments for retirees, workman comp, state audit charges, legal services, the consultants like our superintendent search firm and MSBA dues are all in there.
A big part of that, about 200,000 of that is ESIP. So our early separation incentive program, all the costs associated with that are charged to that account. And so there, I know you're probably looking at that account and say, $500,000, we're volunteers. How the heck is $500,000? I know that sounds weird, but
Get your check last week.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so those are assigned to that account code, to that 2300 account. And so a lot of those probably don't make sense about, well, why would you code it that? Well, DESE manual says that's where we need to put it. And so, again, just looking at that real quick, want to make sure I didn't miss anything on that. ESIP,
Strategic planning is in there too, Robert.
what's that?
Yes, it
Strategic
is.
planning consultants.
Yep, strategic planning is there, consultant for that election. So we just had an election that comes out of that fund. Legal services. And so any type of legal services we may have with maybe a hospital TIF or something like that also comes out of that account. Our audit, that was a big one that really jumped this account. So you can see 6315 audit services were $76,000 from the state. That's obviously going to come off next year. We won't have that expense. So that account will go down by that much. And so those are the big pieces of that board of education function code.
I have another one. The Kaufman Career Coordinator. I thought that was covered under a grant.
It is. So we get the
It
funds
is.
from that and then it offsets the.
Okay.
Correct.
But
Yeah. So on the revenue side up top, you will see funding from Kaufman come in, and then the expenses are offset down here. That's another big piece to Children's First Grant. We over 600,000 for that. And so, looks like we have a lot of extra expenses for that on the expense side, but it's offset by county revenue from the Children's First Grant. So those are other things that can kind of skew at times because we have been able to get those things. Since COVID, there's been a lot of more opportunities to try to get grants and different mental health and things like that has come along than before 2020.
Is summer school numbers down a lot from, was 2020 an off year? Because we're about half of what?
Yeah. So 2020, remind me, Michelle, we only took kids that we felt were at risk
Correct.
and had a very spacious classroom of like 3, 4, 5 kids at max. And so
Yeah.
our numbers were down.
It was invitation only.
Yeah.
And we
brought kids that we knew needed remediation. So it was way down. Fraction of what we would normally have.
And we don't make
We don't make money.
Money
The
on the
expenses
break
though
even.
were
It-
300.
Summer school's about a break even,
It's about.
depending on numbers and staff that work and transportation. But it's great for kids, right? And so,
We don't try to make money on summer school.
correct.
We don't try to lose money on summer school either, for the record.
Great questions. Additional questions? To our new board members, at least you have a budget document that you can actually read. So
Mr. Bloomker, I did want to add one other thing. So we just passed the bond. We're going to get all that funded. That will actually be funded in this year's budget because that should come in sometime in June. So in that last budget revision, you will see whatever monies come in come to fund for capital projects to this year's budget. So you all of a sudden you'll see that this year's budget has almost $50 million worth of it. Well, about 17.5 or 18 million is restricted funds that will carry over to next fiscal year and the fiscal year beyond if it has to get used specifically for that project. It can only be used for that project, only be used for the things we talked about in the question that was asked to our residents in our community. And so sometimes it makes it look like, oh, we had a huge revenue year that year. Well, yes, we did because we passed the bond and we funded it that year, but those monies will move forward to next fiscal years as we construct those projects.
very good. Additional questions?
I make a motion that we approve 11.12 as presented.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks
That'll
for
help us.
answering my questions.
That'll help
too.
us get organized, get our account codes updated in the system.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.13, sorry, we're in double digits. Audit services contract.
Yeah, so many of you guys have met Brad Steele. Brad Steele is the main accountant with Westbrook and Associates.
Hey, Robert,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you're going to give a great presentation, but for the sake of time, I'm okay with this. So move.
How did you know I was going to give a great presentation?
Yes.
I want to say just one sentence. They have been our auditor that also was from the state, came out with one of the only good recommendations from the state since 2015. So because of their great audit services, I think they proved themselves with the state. My recommendation.
So move.
I hear a motion from Mr. Jacoby and a second from Mr. Saxton. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. I thought you said you could go all night.
I almost fell out of my
Oh,
chair,
wow.
Scott.
Are we getting close to all night?
The other stuff. Let's get into the good stuff.
Challenge accepted. 11:14, April 2023 bond bid day.
All right, this is
So
what
mark
he's,
your calendars.
this is what he's wanting to see. Randy, it's saying I can't share my screen. Yeah. All right, so earlier, Mr. Jacoby asked about some economies of scale with HVAC units. And so I believe that was represented on bid day. Why it's not showing? There we go. Is that going now? Can you swap the picture in picture? Thank you. Gotcha. So we had everything prepped and ready for a bid day if the bond passed. The bond passed, so we had our bid day ready to go. And so I wanted to show you the results of that bid day. And so there were a lot of smaller projects that they got, 3 bids, 4 bids, 2 bids. But the main project cost with this round of bid day was HVAC. And so the number you see in this far left column was a project estimate. You can see that Jay Dunn, based on the estimates and based on the scope of the project, was about $2.1 million. And then the column to the right was the actual low bid from the contractor. And so especially on the HVAC, you can see they're estimating 3.1 million. And actually the cost low bid came in at 2.6. And so there was a lot of discussion with the board about, do we do Horizon in 2023 and do middle school in 2026? Well, you guys made the decision to do it all in 2023. And that turned out to be a wise decision because we were able to get great pricing, seeing the large quantity of HVAC units that someone was going to bid on in mass in this bid right here. And so you can see just in that portion alone, the district was $488,214 below estimated bid. And so at the very bottom, you can see the total amount. The project estimate was basically 4.7 million in total. In all, we came in about 4.3 million in bids. And so the 408,000 that you see there in green is the amount that we came under what Jay Dunn estimated on bid day. So that is good news. That means we came in under bid. There's some bid days you come over bid. You realize, our projects are over cost. We overestimated. We're going to have to cut back on projects. This means we're trending great. We're going to have more bid days. The reason we had this bid day so soon is because we had to get contractors secured, ready to go, lined up for summer work. Summer's just around the corner. So we'll have other bid days as transportation details come out with that building, and you see detailed drawings of that. So we'll have about 2 more bid days as we have these projects. But this first one's to make sure we had the work covered for this summer, ready to go. So we're excited about the numbers here. So what you're approving with this bid day is you are approving the contractor for each of the services, from selective demo to structural steel, carpentry, joint sealants, and so on. And then you're approving the amount of the low bid of that contractor bid in this column right here for that contractor. And then the total of all those bids for this bid day was 4.3 million and some change. And again, we'll have subsequent bid days for those projects as we get more detailed drawings from our architect. But we could only get so much completed because we did not want to spend dollars on things we didn't feel like could last the test of time. That if the bond would have failed, we would have basically had a drawing of a transportation center that couldn't happen. We didn't want to do that. We spent our money on stuff like geotechnical and things like that because we're going to own that land for the next 20 years. So whether we do geotech now or 3 years from now, it's going to be the same data. So that's how we decided what we did before the bond or after the bond.
Why was is there a reason that steel and miscellaneous metal came in like, what, 6 times over what was projected? Is that
Yes.
just how?
So I asked that question, and one of the things they said is back orders. Since we had a timeline on it for the HVAC coming online and some of the things we need to do at the high school gym to structure that, our timeline really boosted that up because their normal lead times are still far out. So we had to end up paying a premium to get it in the timeline that we wanted. So that one really jumped up on us.
Did each one of these on bid day, did they carry like more than one bidder?
The one that only carried one was joint sealants. That one did only have one bidder.
Okay.
The other ones carried 2 or more. And then the largest package, which is that HVAC, we had 8 total bidders for that one.
Okay.
So you're going to carry the rest of contingency until you get the rest of your bid packages through and then figure out
Sure.
what change orders look like down the road.
We'll carry in contingency. We will also, at the end of the project, probably have some money left over for savings. Something else we'll have with this project is interest. In the past, we've had such low interest rates, like our last 2020 interest rates for 0.25%. We're going to be able to have interest rates at 4.55, 4.6%. So we're going to be able to build interest on a lot of this too and have extra dollars there. So we may be having conversations a year and a half down the road for additional projects, like additional safety items, some other things. Maybe we can do more at the high school with the entryways, some bathrooms, some things like that. So we'll have some good discussions down the road.
All the HVAC secured pricing.
Correct. Secure pricing.
Nothing like
I hope we
that.
don't have to wait that long on that.
All secure pricing. Now they might get into some demo stuff and have a change order like for the AT abatement. I mean, I could see some change orders there, but as far as the HVAC go, I feel like the scope was really well defined. And I feel like that one we won't have much with.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Glad we saved time for your brilliant presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.15 personnel report.
Need to vote?
So in front of you, you have the personnel report. I can answer any questions you may have.
entertain a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. For those of you still watching at home, we reviewed that in executive session about 8 hours ago. Next item on the agenda, 11.17, 2023-2024 classified salary schedule.
16.
I'm sorry, 16. I clicked on the wrong one. 11.16 at will agreements.
Yes, before you have the list of returning employees and support positions that we issue at will agreements for, I do need to make one correction that it's with Aaron Patterson. He is listed as an instructional assistant on the report, and he's actually an athletic trainer. It will still be an at-will agreement with his current pay scale, et cetera, but I get that note, so I didn't know if we needed to note that in the next step
We can,
with the modification of Aaron Patterson as athletic trainer.
I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal as presented with the modification as presented.
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Yes, second.
I need to abstain from this one too.
Okay.
Family.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote or abstain. Thank you for catching that, Mrs. Carlisle. Motion carries 6-0. Mrs. Carlisle abstained. Now 11:17, classified salary schedule.
Okay, with the support staff schedule here, because we tabled some items and did not approve some of the previous positions, I had assumed that they would be able to never do that. So we need to make an alteration to the schedule. I have placed in row T, communications coordinator. We need to revert that back to Q, communications specialist. And if you do that with that exception, the salary schedule.
To make sure we get approved appropriately, could this wait till May 2nd?
Not if we're sending out the at-will agreements.
Okay, so I would
You just make a statement like you did last time.
I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal with the amendments as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Hear a motion in a second. Being no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Now the ever popular 12.1 miscellaneous.
Yes, and there's only 9 items in it. So, because are you keeping up with the legislative activity? If so, I can skip that. Basically, open enrollment is kind of in a stalemate right now. It is Brad Paulett, who is the head of that committee, is basically saying, even if you opt out now, you'll eventually have to do it because we're going to make it mandatory more than likely. So that was kind of that was news I heard this morning at my superintendent's meeting. But that's kind of in a stalemate right now. But I do foresee that possibly occurring. If you would feel like speaking to your legislator, then we are still looking for parents or school board members or students to take their voice to Jeff City. So that's the biggest update on.
Is this where you wanted us to update the rest of the board?
Yes, on what you did in Jefferson City.
So Mrs. Carlisle, Mr. Jacoby and I made a fantastic trip to Jefferson City. And we got our steps and flights of stairs in rather early in the morning. But I'll let the two of them kind of talk about their day in Jeff City and advocacy on behalf of the district and policies that were important to each of us individually.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You know, being in that room, we each bring something different when we're speaking to our government officials, and I felt like there was a lot of strength in that room and us advocating for our district. And a big talking point was safety. You know, Josh Robert, he stuck his budget up there, and I said, and I know we all agree that nothing else matters in that entire budget if our kids aren't safe. We need help. We need some financial support to ensure that our kids can be safe. So we were strong in that, made a point that that was our goal, a priority for us. I personally enjoyed thanking Senator Hoskins for supporting the Save Women's Sports Act, so that our female athletes can compete as I believe they should. So.
Yeah, for the sake of time, yeah, it was interesting. It's a good experience. I'm disappointed to hear about the mandatory comments, since we talked to our local officials, and they did not see a mandatory part ever coming down the pipeline. So that's interesting. And then, of course, the school safety. It would be nice if they're providing funding for personnel, not just hardware. That's an issue. So we're still left on our own to try to fund the personnel part of it. So, but overall, good experience. And back to you, Jeff.
It was a great day. It was great to be able to spend some time together and talk through the things that are important to the district with our elected officials. And then we're entering the truly silly season of the legislative session. And so things will get ever so interesting. And if you thought we were heated this evening, that's nothing compared to what they're about to be. So as they represent their own districts and trying to do what's right for the state.
Okay.
You.
Everything else on here is kind of a calendar update for you. I already spoke about the TIF hearing continuation on Monday, April 24th at 6 p.m. at City Hall. The Excellence in Education Banquet's coming up on April 25th. So that's an exciting time where we get to honor not only our teachers and support staff, but a community member and a volunteer as well. Retirement celebrations on May 2nd. That is the same date as the board workshop. So I'm not sure that we've determined a location yet for that, right? For the retirement celebration?
It's gonna be in the boardroom.
Okay.
Unless we have some additional.
Yeah, so that's on that same date. The program evaluation. So that night it's budget workshop following it, but for the program evaluation, we have safety, special services, and library media centers. Teacher of the Year and Support Staff of the Year, we will be hosting a breakfast on May 5th. Please let Dr. Canfield know if you're going to attend so we can have enough food for that. Senior Awards Night, as well as graduation. So graduation, Dr. Platt has a couple of, what's wrong, did I miss something? Oh.
No, graduation. Go ahead.
Graduation. I have 2 documents that were shared with me tonight. I noticed an error in one, so I'm not going to send that to you yet, but look for it in a memo. It goes through the outline of graduation, your alphabet. Again, if you have names of students that you want to be able to hand the diploma, you've had the opportunity to do that in the past. The directions are all in there. So I want to give you a chance to review that, and then you can bring it back and we can have some conversations if you have questions about the 2 documents. So it's going to outline it. Also that evening, you're going to have your photo again. So remember last year you had that beautiful photo in front of the Weir Activity Center. We can do that again if you want. I would love for us to get individual photos that night as well, just so nobody has to try to get one. And maybe we could go in and have something set up real quickly and get it snapped, because and before you get hot and sweaty or whatever the weather is, maybe we can snap that and get that done real quick that evening. And Karen has something else.
I will be reaching out to you about if you need a commencement gown and a sash. So
Can I get a gown that looks like everyone else's?
yes, I've got some hanging out there. You can try one on.
Big guy size?
I think so.
They're hanging on outside my door.
Never noticed that yours looks different, Ian, if that helps.
You've never noticed the
Board
difference?
president.
Mine's
will
like
be
a
making his speech.
shiny, it just,
Yeah, I've never noticed.
everyone has the
Little
ripples
different
at the
than last
top, and
year.
I just look
Stacia
like,
said she won't be
I
able to
picked
be
mine
there.
up out of somewhere else and
Your
it's
graduate
the big guy size. They had to go find it.
Okay,
For the picture.
okay.
You know.
Well, that's right before graduation, so we'll have to see.
Will be thin.
Oh, graduation's at 7:30. I thought it was 7.
Yeah.
We might. So might be okay.
So
I better
the
write that
reason I
down.
made a noise about graduation. Is it a policy or is it possible I know that we have the honor of handing out diplomas.
Mhm.
Is it possible that we allow former board members, if they had a relative or friend that they wanted to hand a diploma to, participate in this? Is there a rule that says that we cannot do that?
Can I
I
second
just
that?
think it would be a kind gesture to any former board member that if they have a granddaughter or daughter graduating.
We've only just ever done it that way because of how it's been.
I would have to see, the only thing I would be afraid of, which I'm happy to see,
Yeah.
would be then what if anybody like, oh, if this parent wants to do it, or this
Yeah,
grandparent, I think it just might be a lot of keeping track, but I'm certainly happy to investigate.
Board of Education serving perks.
Right.
Yeah, just a former board member.
So let me see. I don't know. I'll have to check.
That's just.
Why that
something to
number is
think
so
about.
big in the budget, right?
I think it'd be a nice gesture as well. For those that have volunteered and served our district.
Yeah, you could keep
Okay.
it to the board. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah,
Let
just
me
Board of
check.
Education.
I'd
See if there's
imagine
any
we
rules.
only have,
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's just 3 or 4 a year. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just, I think a thought, just a kind gesture for everybody's service. So,
That way we'll see if they're still paying attention long term.
exactly. There you go.
Karen,
They have to
Stacia-
email us tonight that they're still
Russell,
watching and they're involved in order to participate.
Stacia cannot be there until 6:45 for the board photo, so I don't know if that will work with Reed photography or not, so we'll do a little checking.
At least maybe we could do the group photo at 6:45.
Right. And maybe we can send it to us.
Okay.
Okay,
We can Photoshop
last
her.
thing on here,
Real quick, Denise, I don't know if the report shared with you that she was requesting the speech in advance so they can print it again and have it in the final.
it's all part of that document, and so I will,
Okay.
but there you go. For you and I. Okay.
Challenge accepted.
All right, thank you. And the MSBA Summer Summit, and that was called what last year? Ignite Summit.
Yeah.
Igniting great ideas.
So it is June 16th and 17th at Chateau in the Lake in Branson. I know I sent it to Dr. Moss. He's very interested. So I sent that out. I think I sent that out to you guys, or maybe I can't remember if I sent it to Jeff asking, but anyway, if you're interested in attending that, please let Karen know. And that way it would be a great opportunity for learning and a little getaway at the same time. So
It really is a great session. I went last year. I know Susan went to you
Here
before.
before, it's good.
Lots
I'm
of
going this year.
great ideas sharing from other districts on here, some things we've done that works well. And then, a smaller group than, big MSBA where you get to know folks a little bit better and ask some questions. So highly recommend it if you can.
and I think that would be one of those things, if you can decide sooner than later for lodging purposes, it might be helpful.
I'm going. I can't. So I won't be able to.
I will be in St. Louis, so.
I won't be there either.
You're going?
Okay.
um,
All right.
Okay, I'll represent us. I'm getting an award there, so I gotta go.
All right. Okay. That's all I have. So,
Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there with us.
right.
I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I moved.
Second.
Here, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote.